City Council meeting for July 25th. Stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, everybody mic up. Motion second for the agenda.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? I want to move item G out. Probably, I don't know, can we put it after, it kind of doesn't matter, maybe after N, after everything's done?
Sure.
Can we move C out too, please, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah. So I'll move C out to there also.
Do you want it before G? Or do you want it after the move G?
Doesn't matter to me, the order.
Yeah, flip a coin. C, we'll put them in
we'll put
order.
we'll put C first and then G after that. That sounds great.
Any other changes to the agenda? All right, I got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no. Passes 4-0. Consent. With those changes, I need a motion and a second.
I'll motion.
I'll second.
And go ahead. Any discussion?
I've got a couple of things.
Sure.
In the payment of claims, Marty, we had a pretty expensive mailbox replacement.
Yeah,
Shed any light on the cost of that?
that was. So that was over in the Diamond Lake Woods area. Yeah, Diamond Lake Woods. Yeah, I keep forgetting the name of that place. And they have a specific type of mailbox throughout their development. Unfortunately, the plow hit that one and totally demolished it, so we had to replace that. And that was before that we had the $100 cap on that on the mailboxes that we agreed with council. So I had previously agreed to pay the full amount for replacing that mailbox.
No,
That's the exception to the rule, really.
Was a single mailbox or a group?
It was one single mailbox, but it's a very ornate mailbox. I think it's got some copper trim on it, and there's a very elaborate post system in there as well. So that's what the cost came in
I know
at.
we put that limit on it, but I mean, it seems like if we, I don't know how we fix this, but if we definitely took something out and it was in a legal spot, it seems like we should cover that 100%. I don't know how to. I know we put the limit on there because we didn't want.
I think it would be on a per basis of what's going on. I mean, Diamond Lake Woods, again, they have that ornate type of mailbox
Sure.
that the whole entire neighborhood has, so it's not fair for us to give $100 for a mailbox that costs.
No, I get that,
Yeah.
but didn't we put that limit on?
Yes.
And
Well, we did.
How do
It
we-
was more of a direction of, okay, if it's a mailbox and it's hit by the snow or something like
and it's
that.
an
or
AP thing.
Yes, then
Okay.
here's the limit. If we legit took
So
off
if your
the one.
judgment says we took it out, we cover it. That's fine. Go ahead.
Item I, the resolution for final plat and developers agreement for Sundance Screens. They talk about the clubhouse being smaller in this final plat, and I guess I'm curious why it got reduced in size, and also do the residents know about it?
Kevin?
Councilmember Sean, the clubhouse didn't change in size. They just moved the parking to on-street parking versus off into the clubhouse lot. But the amenities remain the same within the clubhouse. It just shifts the parking from west of the clubhouse building to on-street. As on the plan, we're recommending shifting that all to the less traffic street, which would be, I don't remember the street name, but it's the east-west street that would be on the south side of the clubhouse.
So it's not an access into that's shifting. That's the way I read it. They're actually moving all parking off of the plot onto the street.
Yes, correct.
Is it because they ran out of space for the parking lot, or what's the logic, I guess, behind that? I guess I read that differently, but
That's just what they proposed is the preferred option, and it's allowed under our code, so they can do it. We were just having them move the traffic from parking. They had half of it on the north-south street and half of it on the east-west, and we're just having it all on the east-west street, which is the lower traffic street. But we don't require them to have parking for that facility to be internal to the lot.
So you say on street, you don't mean like jotted in for parallel parking. You just mean the street's going to stay the same.
No, what I mean on street is there's still parking spaces that are separated from the main main street surface, but they do access us in and off without an internal traffic circulation system.
Gotcha.
But there are designated spaces,
Okay.
parking spaces. They're just off of the street versus an internal drive where you'd actually use one access to get in and circulate like a typical parking lot.
Oh, thank you. Sorry.
All right, thank you. And then I guess since Scott's not here, I have to ask about item D, the change order. And I'm curious who caused the damage, I guess, on that one. We had,
So there's a combination of different damage. Some of it was caused by vehicle traffic, driving into the flower beds and missing turns and stuff like that during the winter. Some of it was caused by plow damage. I think that was done when they were trying to find more space out there for snow storage because of the amount of snow that was there. So they were pushing back and they got into the flower beds. So that's where the damage comes from.
was that us doing that or MnDOT?
It was MnDOT.
And we don't want to go through the work of the 12K to recover it? I mean, I get it, but
Yeah, it's
I think the answer is yes.
yeah. So, yeah, I was kind of wondering how it's possible to do $12,000 worth of damage there, but cool.
Yeah, well, the description was pretty,
And a 2-inch tree, it's, yeah, so,
right.
or 2-inch trees.
Okay, well, I mean, they're stuck with it, but I was curious who the source was on that one, so that's wonderful. Thank you. That's all I
That's all
got.
you got? Anybody else got
nothing.
anything? Okay, we got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no. 4-0, consent is passed. At this point, we have open forum. Limit it to 3 minutes for non-agenda items. State your name and address. No council action will be taken. And items will be referred back to staff. Do we have anybody here for open forum? We do not. Is there anybody online?
So if you're here for open forum, if you could use the raise your hand function.
Nada?
Nope.
All right. We will close open forum. As staff consultant council updates, Zach.
Yes, evening, Mayor and members of council. Just wanted to give you an update. We did finalize and have, during the last legislation session with the state and government down there, that public safety for each municipality was awarded an amount of money based on population. We did discuss this with the council before. Let you guys know. We did find the amount is going to be $351,000 for money for public safety. We'll receive this money in December. And it can only be used for limited uses related to public safety. So the two chiefs, Chief Hendrickson and Chief Enga, and I met this week to talk about how we're going to use the money moving forward. We don't have any specific dollars set out for anything, but this is one-time money. It's more just an FYI that we're going to get the money and that we have one-time dollars for it. When we get it, we will set it into a separate fund so that we don't use it for any operations dollars or anything else. But just more of an FYI that we'll get $351,000, and there is no expiration date or time frame on that money, so there's no hurry to spend it. So we'll just hold on to it and use it for what we can, and both chiefs will work through that process of bringing those things to you, and then we will bring those just like I do on payment of claims, let you know what's going on. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Amy?
With the new election laws that were passed, one of the options for cities is to pass a resolution deciding on whether we want to have people register to run a write-in or we can pass a resolution stating that we'll only tally the write-ins if the total vote is higher than the names on the ballot. So it can eliminate some workload on the after fact of counting the Mickey Mouses and so that was something new that was changing that I would like to look into. So I'm just looking for council direction on if they would like people to have to register to be able to run as a write-in, and we would only then count those names, or if we would just like to do if the votes are higher than who was on the ballot.
If the write-ins are higher than some number, then you count
Yes.
them. But how do you know if they're higher until you count them?
Good question.
The total number of write-ins.
Oh.
So then you would have to go through and tally them.
5,000
they
people
don't-
voted.
It'll let you know
yeah.
how many write-ins there were.
I'd be okay with that. I'm a little leery of registering before you get a write-in, because a lot of times the reason for the write-in is because people are upset and they want to last minute fix it. But, you know,
Yep. Okay, I will look at example resolutions for that, and you'll be seeing that soon.
cool.
That's all I have to say.
Marty?
Mayor and Council, I have a couple of things tonight. Well 5, they've been doing some blasting out there to develop the cavity at the bottom of the well. They have done 3 rounds of blasting so far. They will probably be doing another round next week just to make sure the cavity is big enough to supply the water that we need.
Well, why are you smirking?
Say again?
Is there a backstory here? What?
Matt's smiling at me.
So they actually.
I heard it today. That's why I was smiling. I thought my wife fell upstairs because I heard a thud, and I was like, "Oh goodness, what happened?" And she's like, "Nope, that was well 5." That's why I was smiling.
Okay.
So how does that work? I mean, they run something down there, they blow it up, but where does it go? It's captured. So
What they do is they run the explosives down the shaft, and then they'll explode those down at the bottom of the shaft. That will open up some space. They will air suck all that material out of there, and then they go down
that makes more sense.
and explode some more dynamite down there and continue that process until they get a cavity that's big enough to supply the water needs that we're looking for.
Is that, so last time you had mentioned, well, 4 was pulling up sand.
Yep.
I know we put a lot of money into that, adding capacity to that motor.
Mm-hmm.
Are we anywhere near that capacity?
No, we're not anywhere near that capacity at the moment.
So all right, I guess my question is we added a lot of money to that well
Yep.
to get that capacity, and
Yep.
if we can't use that capacity, is
We
there a way
can't-
we can fix it?
I believe what's happening is that motor is just running all the time, so it's running 17 hours, so it's not letting the water settle down. So once it stops, then, during the non-irrigation months, I think that we can run at 1,200 gallons a minute easily. It's
Okay.
when we get to these high pressure times where we're pumping 1.4 million gallons a day, that's where we're having the issue. I think as we get more pumps online, that will help us to be able to pump that at 1,200 gallons, because it's not going to be running consistently. I think it just needs time for the water to settle back down in the aquifer.
Okay.
So far, we've had 3 contractors download the specs and bids for the wellhead treatment plant, so there's some interest out there for it. We've been painting some crosswalks where people have requested them and putting signage up. We've done 2 in Hayden Hills where the trails come into the park. There's a couple going in on River Hills Parkway, one particularly where the new trail goes through the woods. And there's a couple of areas that we felt needed some additional signage and crosswalk painting. And there's a couple of areas in River Hills where there was signage but no crosswalks painted, so we painted those in.
Go ahead. When did you expect to get when's the bid closed for the treatment plant?
Sorry?
The bids, when is that closed?
August 15th.
Okay.
When will we see a crosswalk policy to approve so we have consistency versus who's asking for them and who's getting it?
Paisley and Toria pulled something together. I think it needs a little bit of work. We will be discussing that shortly, I would imagine. I've got a few comments I would make to do that. So in the next few weeks, we should have something that's usable.
Thank you.
The plan will be the next meeting.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Water trail. I heard back the house funding came in at $850,000, which was way short of what we were asking for, but is enough to do one of the landings, the one at Stevens. It's going. Senators Smith and Klobuchar are debating with the committee to try and get more funding at the Senate level. So hopefully we'll get a bit more, but we've got $850,000 towards it so far.
You said that's enough to cover the LC Stevens portion.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And when do we get that?
I think that's next year. It's for 2024. It's funding year 2024.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We're moving forward 5 firefighters from the site to the medical exam, so anticipate hopefully in the next couple of weeks, the next council meeting, we should be looking to hire additional 5 firefighters to the organization.
Evening, Mayor and Council. As we all know, August 1st, the legalization of marijuana starts. We have been fielding calls about use of marijuana in our public parks, sidewalks, stuff like that. Looking at to see if there's any feelings about an ordinance about use in public places.
We have an ordinance in place around alcohol use in those public places, I'm assuming?
Correct.
So
I'd stick with that.
that's my thought is it should, in my opinion, it should match whatever we use for
Can mirror that.
alcoholic beverages.
Okay. We'll work with the new city attorney to get an
Well,
ordinance drafted.
I mean, if we have an ordinance about areas that you can't smoke,
We
know,
do
I
not.
think it's both
We do
in
not.
this case.
We do not have anything for cigarette
Smoking.
smoke.
We can update that though, because there are many cities who don't allow it in parks.
Yeah. I know one comment I read related to the League of Minnesota Cities stuff was that if we had an ordinance related to smoking, if we said cigarette smoking in it, we should, consider making it just smoking.
Yeah, they're suggesting anything related
Right.
to smoking, vaping,
Baby.
that it be generalized now that marijuana is legal, because it could be other than tobacco products.
And currently, we don't have an ordinance for the smoking.
Okay. Well, then it just relates to the alcohol use then. Yeah, I
Yep.
think we should mimic or tag along with that.
Okay. Thank you.
Should we have one for smoking in general, public places, or?
We do have a tobacco ordinance.
Do we?
The last time we updated it is when the age change happened to 21, from 18 to 21, which was a few years ago now, but I think it could be looked at as we implement a new ordinance on marijuana, now that it will be legal.
Review it. Oh.
So we'll work with the new city attorney to draft a tobacco ordinance that includes the use of marijuana in public places.
Okay.
Thank you.
Evening, Mayor and Council. I have no updates tonight.
Scott,
Where we at?
You.
What's your update?
have anything?
Made it?
1,047 miles since yesterday.
I went 4,300 yesterday.
Yeah.
By air.
You had help, yeah.
My arms got tired.
I got nothing. I'll just sit back and chill.
Nothing. Nope.
I got nothing.
Nothing for me.
Yeah.
I just got one thing, Marty. Who's responsible for taking care of the underpass under Dayton Road from River Hills Park to LC Stevens?
That would be city.
City. Can you someone go take a look down there? There's some.
The graffiti's gone.
Is it? Oh,
Yeah.
perfect. Perfect. I was there 3 days ago. You're already on it. I love it. It's done. Perfect. Thank you very much. That's all I had.
So that's kind of weird. It's under a county road, but it's ours.
That's why I asked.
Yeah, that seems, yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. We are on to item J. adopt updated historic village improvement plan.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. I'm just going to show because I didn't pull up a PowerPoint or everything else for that. I'm just going to pull up what was sent out for the packet. That's correct. So what this is the Historic Village Framework Plan. This was given to the EDA, I don't know, I feel like 6 or 9 months ago or something. And there have been reviews and discussions. We got feedback from all of the commissions. The EDA, again, was heading up this process. We got feedback from the Parks Commission, the Planning Commission, and then we also held an open house for residents down in the Historic Village. It was well attended and very well appreciated all of their time. And we took all the feedback we got back from that. The EDA decided to update as best as they could. And the plan was provided to you with the updated framework plan. Again, this is more of a guidance document than anything else. This is not in any sort of comp plan or anything. This was in the 2030 comp plan, removed in the 2040 comp plan, and then never looked at after that. 3 major changes that the EDA is recommending after the Historic Village Framework Plan went to residents. Number 1 would be removing this walking trail along the river. They thought that obviously there's backyards. This was designed by somebody who did not actually walk the property or anything. So they just took an aerial view and said this looks like a great place for a walking trail, which was done in the 2030 comp plan. So this isn't something that was added. But the residents expressed concern of having people walk or ride a bike through their backyard. The second one was removing the walking bridge. So in the current 2030 comp plan, or the most recent one that we adopted, there was 2 walking bridges, one that went east-west across from Slabtown, or in the Wright County portion of Dayton, across over to basically Brockton Lane, and then one that went north-south over to the Historic Village area from Slabtown. The EDA removed the first one and said that the second one would be, could be utilized. Lots of resident feedback along that, and they basically said they do not want anything related to a walking bridge anywhere between those two. Said if you do want a walking bridge area, add it to the park, add it to the bridge on the current bridge that's there. That was added as part of the process as well. And then the other change they're looking to do possibly is removing the roundabout in the Historic Village, the north roundabout here, which they did not feel was needed from residents after the EDA had reviewed it. So the last one was adjusting a trail, so basically allowing a trail to go through here right now. This would connect to Three Rivers Park District to this, basically to the south and east, and hopefully be able to connect up into their, I don't remember what area, West Mississippi River Regional Trail, and their Diamond Lake Regional Trail that they'd like to have for Three Rivers Park District long term. I think the idea would be just make this trail straight along Robinson Street and out to the other side. So at least there's a bike trail to go down that way, or maybe the sidewalk's a little wider on that side of the roadway to allow for street. Maybe it's street riding too. You could make an extra lane there on the side for bike, pedestrian, or bike traffic. But essentially moving the walking trail around the outside, moving the walking bridge from Slabtown to the Historic Village, and removing the roundabout are the 3 updates that the EDA thought was appropriate based on the feedback received from residents. What I'm looking for tonight, or what staff is looking for tonight, is approval of this with any adjustments that you want made. I did not make any adjustments prior to this because I wanted to make sure that since the council has the final say in this, we can adopt an updated plan, which is always good to have an updated plan. However, the council can decide not to do anything, and then it goes back to the previous 2030 comp plan, and we didn't do anything and update it. But I'm here for any questions and stand for any comments or concerns you have with it. Any comments or if any adjustments are made, I will make those to the final plan and then send out to council for any final revisions that were adopted. But otherwise, I hear standing for questions.
I would.
So the only thing left here is, besides the pretty picture, is a rough idea of what the planned use is downtown, right? The guided.
Yes, so the current guided use for this entire area is mixed use. It is one giant purple blob, essentially, of mixed use. This would be more of a guidance of more granular level of what you'd think it would be. Again, this is a framework or a design. It is not saying that this is current guidance or any guided use. This could be used to adjust guided use in the 2050 comp plan, but this, again, would just be more or less a diagram of what we think would be best, but does not really have this doesn't have legal standing at all with, like, we can't tell them.
I
to do
guess what
what's
I'm
here.
getting at is I'm kind of wondering what the point of this thing is anymore. Because we know we're going to adjust the guided use down there. We know that it's all purple and it needs to be looked at. But I just don't get what this is buying us anymore other than.
This would be essentially like it's not quite a master plan,
Right.
but it would kind of be more of a diagram plan of what you feel would be best on there and use it as a guided use document. But again, it's not anything legal binding or anything like that. It's more or less what we'd love to see down there. And again, we could try to push those things towards this plan, but this doesn't have any legal ramifications if it's
And
not
we don't
followed.
do anything like this for anywhere else as far as what guided use is.
Nope.
So that's my point is I don't know what purpose this serves anymore. I mean, I do think that we need to get on that and get that guided use figured out down there. But as far as this thing goes, I don't have any gas for this thing anymore. It just doesn't seem to serve a point.
I can't disagree or argue with it because
You
this
know,
is what the EDA was tasked
no,
with.
I know.
I've been
And you know,
the staff
when
liaison.
that Dayton by Design group kind of did some adjustments to this, it had some cool stuff on there. And so conceptually it was kind of neat, but all those things, reality hit, and the connection to Brockton, you suddenly, you realized you got like about a 45-degree bank there at 100 feet, and you're not doing anything with that. I mean, all the pretty things disappeared probably for all the right reasons. And what you're left with is guided use, kind of. So,
essentially. I mean, the EDA decided right away that they want to make it realistic and not futuristic. They
Yes.
said what can really be done
Yep.
and what really can't be done. And that's why, like I said, some of the bridges were removed, some of the
And what was
high
left
densities
was-
that were
yeah.
put down there weren't even possible. Revamping roads and streets that were turned into half moons were removed
Right.
because it's just not possible, and make it more of a feasible plan. At this point, there's not really a bad thing to just adopt it, because if this is what the guided use you think is going to be, then it makes no sense not to. But if you have no feeling of that this is the right guided use, then
Yeah, I don't think
Then
it's
we-
the right guided use either, but
then that's fine. Yeah. I can't
I mean,
argue about it.
some of
any
it
which
I'm
way.
okay with, but I don't. That's my 2 cents. I just don't see its purpose anymore.
Well, I think one thing it accomplishes is that the 2020 or the 2030 plan that was in the comp plan is unrealistic, and
Yes.
the revised version that's not really in any document other than the Dayton by Design stuff was probably more unrealistic, and clearly the feedback we got from the meeting with the residents was that several of these elements, which is less than what had originally been on there, aren't desired by the people that live there. So I think it's just a progression. It's probably not as big a step as it should be for the amount of time we've spent on it.
And that was part of my concern, is it seemed like, at least at the last meeting, the EDA probably should have focused on guided use instead of this thing. It's my take, but, because we all know guided use down there needs to change, so.
My opinion, it's been a pretty picture tucked away in the archives for 15 years. It's a pretty picture. It's going to take willing sellers, which currently nobody wants to do that. So it'll take a whole bunch of sellers and a developer to make it happen, and it's probably going to be a pretty picture for the next 15, 20 years.
Right.
That's
So,
it.
and there's a lot. I mean, this is a vision, because we know that the infrastructure isn't there to do much of this, to change much of what's there, and we're not. This doesn't address any of that.
Right.
And I don't know that. I don't think that was the intent of it, was to get all of the details in there, but stormwater ponding and the other things that Jason had mentioned around there, plus the sewer going under the river and so on, its capacity.
Yeah, ponding
So-
and parking is the two things that are needed, and they're not even addressed here, so. Yeah.
Yeah, this is not an engineering drawing. This is
Yep.
simply a
So you're just
picture
saying
of guided use.
we can approve this and be done with it?
You got it.
It goes in a file cabinet somewhere.
Be the
For
cover
now,
for the
yep.
binder.
All right, yeah.
So I would make a motion that we approve it with the resident and EDA recommended
Sure.
changes.
Mr. Mayor, member of this council, if I can, I would keep the roundabout in because we have numerous accidents where they slide into people's yards
Wintertime.
in the wintertime. So I would suggest, as for public safety reasons, to keep the roundabout in there.
That roundabout,
The north
Down that
downtown?
corner
Yep.
up there, yeah.
I was going to say the same thing.
The one downtown or the one by Plants?
Both. Let's keep
The,
both.
Keep 'em
This
both
one
in
here you're
there.
talking. This,
Yep.
this is the one that the
Yep.
residents had expressed that they would like to have removed on the plan. But
yep, keep that one there.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing because I've talked to both homeowners on the where the red building is, and then to the just due east of the roundabout, and the one in the red building with she lives there. She actually had a car go right into her house there.
She
so,
has, yeah.
So I feel like having the roundabout there for no other reason to get people to slow down and hopefully create some kind of barrier to help reduce. If there's a business, say you don't have a car going to business, it's whatever that looks like. So I would say that makes sense. So I appreciate your input because I was going to say the same exact thing. The other comment I was going to make is I'm neither for nor against the walking bridge. Scott made a good point. What's $2 million on $200 million? Like at that point, it's
if
pretty
it
much-
happens, yeah.
Yep, if it happens. The one thing I will call out though is on the Wright County part of that, we have medium density homes with them for nowhere to go. And if the idea is for them to then walk all the way around, which I get they can walk, that road is not a walking friendly road, and we can't put sidewalks in to make it walking friendly because it's not the city of Dayton. And so my recommendation was if we're going to remove the bridge, we should make that keep that Wright County area a single family home because it just you're putting the multifamily home in there or medium density homes to then provide more bodies to go into town to do shopping, those kind of things. So I understand why they may have done that, but from a planning perspective, I don't care if the bridge is there or not. But if the bridge goes away, I think we should change it. That was
You're
my-
just saying the purple's in Slabtown too, right? That's the deal. And I guess I didn't catch that.
well, the slab town is zoned as medium family
well,
residential.
on this picture,
On
it's
this
The Wright
it's-
County portion?
The Wright
The
County.
Wright County
Yeah.
portion is in the purple blob currently
Yes.
in guided use. Right now, and this would be in this again. This
Okay.
picture would be medium density.
Yep.
If you're from what Councilmember Trost is saying is that if you remove the walking bridge, we should just change this instead of being medium density over here.
Just single
Single.
family. Or
Make it
keep the
single.
bridge and keep me. I don't care which. I have no preference either way, but
Okay.
it doesn't make
call
sense to
out.
keep it medium.
I like
Again, I think the whole area needs to be looked at.
Agreed.
Yep.
Guided use.
Don't
and
disagree.
stuff.
But if we're going to approve it, I'd rather have some kind of logic behind some things we're approving than just approve it to approve it.
I think the bridge is nice if it materializes.
Yep.
And you can go out there at 6 a.m. and watch the ducks float down the river if that's what you want to do and drink a cup of coffee.
Yeah. I don't disagree. I'm happy to vote for it with or without the bridge, but if we're going to do without the bridge, I'd like it changed to single family. Single family residential is what it's coded on here versus medium family.
I'd like to change a lot of the,
I understand.
I just,
Let's satisfy
I'm
stuff.
here for questions.
In reality, it's all going to change anyway.
Yep.
It really doesn't
yeah,
matter.
it's,
It may not.
Those are my two. The roundabout.
We had
I'll make a motion to approve
We had a
it.
motion.
Just the way,
I don't-
we got
yeah,
it?
I don't
Oh,
know.
yeah,
Did anybody
Dave did it.
second it?
I'll
Yeah.
second it.
and
So your second was to do everything, remove everything that the residents wanted. The three suggestions, which was remove the walking bridge, remove the walking trail, and remove the roundabout.
Yeah,
That's what-
because to me, when the conversation comes back, we're going to talk about it again. Probably not this group, but some group 10 years from now.
I just think it needs to go to a file cabinet and be forgotten about because we need to focus on what, the guided use is down there.
That's, in reality, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah. Okay. Was that your motion?
Yeah, what was the motion again?
David and Scott.
David Scott, okay.
And the motion was to remove the walking
To do
bridge.
the
Remove
three
the trail,
suggestions,
roundabout,
so no
walking
walking
bridge.
trail, no footbridge, and no roundabout.
Correct. The north roundabout, not the south.
Sorry.
one.
The
Yes,
north
so-
The
roundabout,
north
not
one. The one in the downtown area,
Not the one on Brockton.
not the one in Brockton.
Okay.
Yeah, and the one on Brockton, I think the county's already looking at. I think they Jason mentioned this a couple years ago, they were looking at some point that's going to
I would hope so.
That'll be another 20 years too, at the rate they're going.
It's a good comment.
Okay, so we got a motion, a second, and probably too much discussion. Any more discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no.
No.
Passes 3-2.
Yeah.
Did you guys want to elaborate on the no votes? Did
Well,
we
I'm,
miss something?
I'm with Paul. I would like to keep that roundabout there. And make the changes to Matt's point to keep these single family if you're going to keep the bridge. So
I don't disagree.
or if
remove
you're
the
going to
bridge.
remove them,
Yep.
yeah,
I don't
Okay.
disagree. It's going to go to filing cabinet, but if
Yeah.
I'm going to vote for it,
yeah.
that's just
So
what
I
I'd
mean,
like to see. That's all.
It is
Yeah.
what it is. It's going to go in the filing cabinet. You guys are going to
Okay.
talk about it, and it is what it is. It's just a vote. So
Okay. So it's 3-2 to adopt. Now we're on to K, concept plan review, Dayton Parkway neighborhood.
And then I forgot to actually share the screen, so then the people on Zoom can see
Oh.
your presentation as well. My bad. You can move that just again.
Where? What?
Either you can move the bar if you
Oh,
want,
okay.
but just don't click on the comment, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This is it's called Deem the Parkway Neighborhood Concept Plan. The applicant is WME Real Estate Holdings. It is located in the triangle in the southwest corner of Dayton, south of 94. It is 51 acres, guided mixed use, which has a minimum density of 12 units an acre. It's currently zoned A1 agriculture. It's kind of in that holding district for now. And it is in the 2020 MUSA or urban service area for the city or for the guidance plan for utilities. And clicking's not working. There we go. To go over some of the site constraints, because this site does have quite a few. On the left-hand side is the wetland map. On the right-hand side is the floodplain map. Our site roughly runs from about here straight south to the boundary with Maple Grove, and then follows 94 on the western or eastern edge. So there is a wetland complex. Well, three of them actually. One located on the north of the site, one located kind of on the western portion of the site, and one located on the east of the site. There is a city-owned parcel that kind of straddles between this parcel and the Cheney parcels. So the city does have part of these wetland areas within its the property, and so there has been discussions with the applicant about potential opportunities for wetland banking and things like that if this project were to move forward, to allow some of the wetlands to remain as wetland banking credits on the city parcel. But that will come at a future date, just mentioning it now because it has been in discussion. There is then also a large amount of floodplain associated with those wetlands, so there's a different scale to both these, but we're essentially running here, so the entire western portion of this property is shown as floodplain. It's a little easier to see once you get into the site plan. This is the applicant's proposed concept plan. You'll note the blue line is the floodplain line as it runs along, as I showed you in the other drawing. And then the wetlands are located, the three I mentioned, one here, one on the north side, and then one bordering Highway 94. To kind of run through some of the elements on the concept plan, there are 2 apartment buildings shown at 125 units in each. They do share a parking area that is internal here. Then there's essentially 3 different types of housing proposed. One other type is a townhome. So this is a 6-unit buildings with 6 buildings here, so 36 units shown for some townhome units. And then essentially like a mid-density or a mid-apartment, small apartment complex where each of the buildings here has 12 units, and so those will have multiple levels of units on those. So those 3 mixes of housing make up the proposed for the concept plan. A couple other elements on here as well. There are 2 accesses, one This runs out to Dayton Parkway. With future drawings, we'll have to get additional details on where that connects and how. But it is shown to connect out to Dayton Parkway. There is a secondary access shown on the southwest corner that is extending out and will have to be made to Brockton for public safety purposes. It hasn't been developed yet whether this will be a full access or an emergency vehicle access, as this is running through floodplain and has some significant natural resources that will need to be avoided. There is currently essentially a driven gravel road on the property. So this, as we're moving west, there's a triangular property that extends out to Brockton, and that essentially traveled area would need to be converted into and enter discussions with that property in order to make that connection. So that's something moving forward from a concept plan they would need to develop what those plans would be for. There is a clubhouse with a pool shown with guest parking spaces. The guest parking spaces would serve for the clubhouse as well as some of the townhomes and some of the mid-density apartments. For that as an amenity area. Additionally, the entire area within the floodplain and the wetland area is shown as a multi-function recreation area. So there's not any details on what that's going to be at this time, but they're going to use it for recreation purposes. So whether that would be trails or more natural in features, because we're trying to not impact, or you can't build any structures in the floodplain. So there won't be any permanent structures, but having trails or things, recreation opportunities within that area. And that'll be developed should the applicant move forward from concept plan to a formal development application. Additionally, they do show lots of landscaping on the site and a lot of it bordering Highway 94 to screen and mitigate for some of the noise and then also for some of the visual aspect as well. So those are some of the elements on the concept plan. Some of the example architecture, so a concept plan, we don't require formal elevations, but do ask for some examples of what the architecture could look like for the buildings. So some of these are examples of the apartment structures with the two buildings. So the applicant would need to meet the requirements for the GMU 5 district. So this district, should it move forward, or this site would have to be rezoned from A1 to General Mixed Use 5. Which is our GMU district, our general mixed use district for the entire triangular area southwest of 94. So there are architecture requirements associated with that on number or variety of materials, variety of the building from pushing it forward, pushing it back, having breakups in the building to make sure that the architecture isn't all in one face, things like that. We don't evaluate a concept plan for architecture, but we do provide the applicant with that information as they do prepare plans, and then they have provided example architecture images for what they could prepare. So they are anticipating a higher level of architecture. Most of these buildings, just from a quick glance, with small revisions, could meet our standards for the general mixed use 5. So they are good examples of what could meet it. Not doing a thorough review. And then there are some examples, especially the one here, on what some of the townhome or mid-density apartments could look like as well. And those will still need to meet the architecture standards as well. So with that, there'd be a number of applications required before we can move into any type of development. So there would be a comprehensive plan amendment to the staging to bring it from 2020 into current if they were to service it currently. There'd be a rezoning from A1 to the general mixed use 5 district. They would need to preliminary plat the site along with a development stage PUD and then move into a final plat and a final PUD. So there would be essentially the first four, the comprehensive plan, rezoning, preliminary plat, and development stage PUD would likely all come in at one time, and then move into final plat and final PUD after that. So as I mentioned, just to go over the breakdown of the units, there are 374 units total, broken into 2 apartment buildings, 125 units each, 36 townhome units, and 88 mid-density small bedroom or small apartment buildings. 2 to 3 bedroom units in the apartment building are what proposed, and studio through 4 bedroom for the smaller mid-density, which are those 12 unit buildings. That puts it at an approximate, and this is approximate because we don't have full drawings yet, but net density of 15.6 units an acre. So it is above the 12 units an acre required as a minimum. And then just to give you an idea of some of the development standards that would be applicable for the application when it moves forward. Lot size, 25,000 square feet, lot width 150. They can have up to 80% impervious surface, and then there's some setbacks, so 20 feet from public roadways, 30 feet from Interstate 94, 35-foot buffers, which is those landscaping I mentioned from arterial roadways, which would be 94. Same thing for the rear, and then the height of 45 feet or 4 stories. So those apartment buildings are 4 stories. I mentioned the access to Dayton Parkway and the second connection west to Brockton or 101. The Rush Creek crossing will need additional information with the next application to know how that crossing occurs and making sure it doesn't interrupt Rush Creek. For the utilities of the property, sanitary sewer is located west of the site, so that is available to the site. Water main is located, we have 2 options, and it kind of depends on how development occurs in that southwest corner and which connection they may use, depending on if the Shaney property develops before them or if they develop before the Shaney. That'll kind of dictate where the utilities will come from. But there is a 12-inch water main that could serve the site from the northwest, and that would be on City of Rogers water. And there's a 16-inch water main from the City of Maple Grove that could serve the property from the southeast. So the two have 2 opportunities depending on how development occurs. Parking, and this is mentioned just because there's kind of a PUD flexibility identified early on. For multifamily, it's 2 units with 1 enclosed and a half of the space for every 5 units for guest parking, which requires a total of 710 spaces or 338 enclosed. For townhomes, 2 enclosed spaces and 2 surface spaces with an additional half space for dwelling unit visitors. That puts it at 160 spaces and 72 enclosed. They are proposing to meet the parking for townhomes, but not for multifamily residential. Proposing only 795 of the total 870, with the deficit coming up for multifamily residential. So that would require PUD flexibility, and the applicant is aware of that, and will bring forward with a formal application reasoning for why they are proposing to deviate from the code with the PUD.
Can we, so this has come up a number of times. It seems like every development, we tell them they need so much, and the professionals that were coming in to apply tell us we're high. Mm-hmm. And I thought we were going to at some point look at our parking requirements, because it seems like they're out of date.
Mm-hmm. And that may be the case. The market changes for parking changes quicker than our codes ever can.
Right.
But we haven't looked at parking recently, so it is on the list to look at, but just has not been looked at as a whole. Because when you go in, you'd want to do kind of a thorough look at each use, not just 1 or 2 particular, so you can get them all kind of in one take. And the parking may be high for this, and I think seeing the reasoning from people who develop multifamily or townhomes consistently is kind of going to give us the best feedback, because there are changing needs. I mean, as society progresses, the reliance on vehicles may become less. This isn't a transportation corridor, so maybe there's public transit available.
I just look at it from the standpoint of they have customers to make happy, so you'd think they'd know how many parking spots.
Exactly, yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And in this case, having less parking may be a good thing because of the natural resources that are there, and using that space for buffering from 94 as well, things like that. Right. Parks and trails, so they do provide for, or they are planning to provide some type of active recreation through their open space on the site, whether that's trails that are either mulch or mown, or that'll be identified later, but they are going to have natural trails through there, along with a trail that would access from to Dayton Parkway from the development, so all the way up through past the apartment buildings. And then how that connects in with the multifunction recreation space could be identified to hopefully create a nice trail network that could be utilized for the 375 occupants of the units, or 374 units that have occupants. Because the multifunction recreation space is identified as a private park or not a city-owned park, they will be required to supply park and trail dedication for the units, and they would not receive credit for the park area. We don't evaluate landscaping and tree preservation and screening and all of the details with that within a concept plan, but it is good to note that they will be required with a preliminary plat to do a tree inventory to show what trees will be are on site and what will be removed for the development, to know whether they're meeting the tree preservation requirements and if they need to mitigate for removing over the 40% threshold for mitigation. And then also that they'll need to provide a 35-foot wide buffer along the entire boundary of 94 that screens 94 from the apartment buildings and the mid-density units. Oh, I carried this over from Planning Commission, but same thing for council. Review the concept plan, and all these comments are informal, but we'll provide the developer and the applicant feedback on how the council feels on the concept plan. So with that, if there's any questions, I'll throw up the image because I think that'll probably be the most
Who
helpful.
wants to start?
If there's any questions for staff, and then the applicant is present as well.
Go ahead.
I just have a couple things. So, first, from the fire chief and police chief, Chief Engel, staffing wise, is this going to create any additional staffing needs from the police force to add this number of units in the city in a short period of time?
With the additions and future staffing needs that I'm looking for, it would add calls for service, but not a need for immediate additional staff with the staffing needs that I've put in for 24 and 25.
Perfect, thank you. And then,
All right.
Fire Chief, do you feel, given the height of these vehicles, we've got the height of these buildings, we've got the vehicles necessary to service these if needed?
Mayor and members of council, regardless of the four-story height, we have comparables in commercial properties as well as some single-family residents that mimic that. So yes, there's a need for a ladder device at some point.
Okay. And then my last question is more for the if it's going to come up one way or the other, I might as well just go for it.
We can add some sort of a fee for that,
Yeah,
can't we?
yeah. So my other question is more timely given our previous conversation, which is in order to do this, we're going to have to put an intersection in on, I forget the name of the road. Dayton Parkway. And that's going to cause a cost to the city. And so I'm curious if the developer is willing to work with the city to help offset that cost.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can we speak?
Yeah, come on up.
Come on up.
Yeah.
All right, happy day.
Please. Happy day.
Hi, Mayor and Council. Michael, I'm with the developer. And yes, we're actually getting together tomorrow with others.
Either touch the
Either gotta
glass
use
there
that one
or
or
use
yeah.
that one.
Sorry.
Last time you
Okay,
gave
testing. Hello? Okay. Yes, sir, and hi, Mayor and Council. So yes is the answer. We're planning to come in off of Dayton. There's already the curb cut there on the north side or south side of Dayton Parkway. And the envision is it'll come south and then go both east and west. East into our site, west to the Shaney, those properties over there. And so we have all of that planned and kind of incorporated into our development.
Does that include like a roundabout or street light on Dayton Parkway?
Not that I've seen. I think it's because they have you can, if you're coming from 94 headed west, there's the way the road's all built, you just take a left into it. So, for our use, we wouldn't really need, I don't think there's not a traffic that would require something like that. I can't speak to what Shaney Property's doing in commercial and how many more traffic, what that looks like, but we would be considered kind of a low density, low traffic on our portion.
So we're doing right in, right out there then? That intersection, is that the idea?
Yeah, we'd have to have a conversation. We need to have a conversation with
Okay.
the developer before we move forward because unfortunately Jason Quisberg, the engineer who's not here tonight, is going to be the one who's going to know when that's going to be needed. And we'll work with the developer to get that out.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah. Can I address a couple other things that you
Yeah.
guys have brought up? Is okay? All right, now I got to remember all of them. Let's start with Chief. Down at the bottom is an emergency exit that once you get above, I think, 200 units, you have to have this second. We've driven that road. It's very well already used. I have an engineer looking into the existing bridge structure, I guess you'd call it, that goes up over Rush Creek to hit the kind of pounds that the chief needs to get across, safely, and that would be designated as an emergency exit. Secondly, which is kind of an exciting thing that I think this property has, or we look at it as, something honorable. Yes, we're up on 94, in addition to the code, which says 35 feet and buffer from 94. We really want to do something quite nice there, right? So if you're driving and you're used to 94 in the future, you'll know where Dayton, Minnesota is, right? Because it's that part where the 94 turns, and how we're going to do that is really turn that into something quite special that's, iconic in a way. And so in our forthcoming submittals, you'll see some things along that line, but I think you'll be excited about how we're treating that area between 94 and the property for both the public on the outside looking and thinking, my, this is a nice, you get this gorgeous exit ramp you guys have done, it's something special, and then you've got almost a mile of frontage road. The other thing with regard to parking, a couple things. We have, as you can see, quite a bit of excess land. There's 26 acres that we can't develop. And that's why we've, kept all of this at what can be done right now, using an analogy, putting the ball down the fairway, right? But should parking become an issue, you just know that we have excess land. It's not, we're crammed for it. But I think to your point, Mr. Fisher, parking ordinances and things like this have kind of stayed sort of static. Well, the development industry has changed dramatically. If you look at the average square footage of a one-bedroom unit when I was 18 years old versus today, and how much, everything is different. Yeah. So we were going to provide to Mr. Dowd and all of you, and I'm sure the private sector third party can help with a parking report, but we have several projects around the Twin Cities that have this exact 4 stories over one. They park well, they rent well, they manage well. And so we feel pretty comfortable with the ask. Isn't because we're stuck and we don't have enough land and we're just trying to force something through. We're providing, to your point, Mr. Fisher, something that's very sustainable, very livable, and it works. And it's tried and true several times in other communities. And so that's kind of that's how we developed that site. And then the other, only a small modification and not a big deal on the slide. So these buildings here are your 4/1, right, which is 4 stories above a concrete. They have the underground integrated parking, and these are going to run from let's call it a 60-40 split, or about 59% of them are going to be 1-bedrooms and studios, or what they call studios alcoves. 40% of them are 2- and 3-bedroom. Right. Then you go into this mid-density, and here's, the townhomes is about the only place you're going to get to like a 4-bedroom. And then these are also, there's a little bit of studios, but here you have a mixture that's more the flip, right? 40 to 50% of them are 1-bedrooms, and the majority, the 60%, are the 2 and 3. These are 2-story. They have integrated parking, so you think about families with kids. Here you're pulling in, you pull into your garage, you walk right into your house, right? So they're very unique in the way that we've structured the whole development, is really to have a couple of types of housing that work very well together. It's not all just one thing, too much of. We've talked, quite a bit with the pond and, having trail systems, and Zach and I, Mr. Dowd and I will be, kind of dialing in on this. And I think the only other comment that that I should share with you, and Ben, who's over here, our architect, he's with Cost Wilson. We've spent a bit of time kind of zoomed out a little bit and looking at the project long term, and something that's rather exciting that's kind of coming down the pike is the county has a division, they call it Three Rivers, right? It's the park system that runs, you probably know well here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just a little.
Just a little.
So I've done a lot of reading on all of what they've been on their comprehensive plan. I just met with the gal actually today for lunch, so I could come in and at least have that under my belt with a dialogue. So they've reviewed the plan and are supportive of what we're doing. But the reason why that even matters is their strategic plan long-term is to run a regional trail called the Rush Creek Regional Trail, and it runs from the Elm Creek Park out to Crow-Hassan. How you say? Something like this.
Hassan,
yes.
something
Yes.
like that, yeah.
We're at perfectly like at this midway point, right? So we had some really good discussions this morning, and so it will appear what they're actually looking to accomplish is the trailhead is going to come up through over here, coming in from Maple Grove, which is the the Hindu temple site, right? Mm-hmm. So once it gets here, what their objective is actually to have the trail come up to Dayton Parkway, over to Brockton, and then cross Brockton. And if you guys have been there, you'll see when they built the Lennar site, Dayton Parkway continues west of Brockton, and that trail then takes off and heads towards the Crowhassan. So we have a very strategically located piece smack in the middle of this, whatever it is, 11 miles. And so as both a quality of life for the project itself, for the broader city and the communities that are Maple Grove, Dayton, it's one of those important spots. So we've had a very good meeting with that. That'll continue, and we'll be here to see you, as that time unfolds. And then lastly, let's think about kind of rollout. And you mentioned this with regard to chief and staffing. This is currently shown as about 374 units. And we have, think about it like 3 times 125. The building at the top, 125. The building, the L shape, 125. And then the combination of townhome and mid-rise, 124. So there are 3 equal components. So how this will roll out naturally is, there's the wish, and you can draw anything on paper, but, this is $100 million a project. So the markets, things like the interest rates, lots of things implicate timing, absorption, demand, all this. So I've developed this and worked very, very, very closely with one of the research companies, Maxfield Research, and they do the bulk, they do quite a bit of market studies for HUD, government funded, and multifamily. So I spent about 2 months working on this before coming before you today to give you this is not only the project, but when we think about construction, our intent as it sits right now, you go to that, well, you don't have to pull up the slide, but where he was taking us down through preliminary plat and that initial stuff, we'd like to get through here, the PUD stage, and have all of that to you in December. So that we're kind of, by the end of the year, we've got it baked, we know what our plan is, and then we spend January, February, and March, final plat, final building construction documents, and try to plow dirt, beginning when road restrictions are off in the spring. And then the plan is to build this in the relationship of delivering units tied to market demand, right? So that we have 2 things happening. You don't have a lot of empty places sitting where you've got construction money that's oodles more than it was a year ago, and everything is in sync. So my point is then, Chief, we got 375. This will deliver. The plan is we'll have some delivery of units in 24, but most of this is 25, 6, and 27, right? And so we'll have time to grow into it is all I'm getting at.
Thank you, sir. Dennis, did you have something too?
I've got some.
I'm good.
And as you grow into it, will it be pieces of each particular 125 or all one unit or?
No, great question. Can you go back to the site plan? So we broke this into, so you can see this dashed line here. So this is a 7.25 acres with the 250 units. And then you have a second piece, which is the 16 acres lower density. We've underwritten both of these completely separate as separate projects. And, talking with the market right now and kind of introducing, and that'll help determine in some ways what might go first versus second. But the idea would be that we would build this section perhaps first, right, along the highway and the higher density, and allow time and the market to keep telling us more and more, because it is, as we know, this is zoned in a way that, let's just play this out. In 5 years, everything else is built. We're still on exit ramp that they're not making any more of them, and if they do, it's a lot out of town. So this site here, we may find that by building this, that there's some tweaks long term before we go into another round. But to your question then, sir, this size unit just finished in Maple Grove, straight down Brockton, right across from Hy-Vee. And so we did those buildings a little bit staggered, where the first one came online several months before the last one. And all through the difference, you're moving people in. into them. So this building would get to, let's just say, a C of O, and you'd be moving in, usually about 30% of the building moves in on day one when you've got your occupancy, and then we're running like 8 to 10 units a month move in. So it should be a pretty smooth construction and leasing process where we're, you don't have vast sums of buildings just sitting vacant waiting.
Can you talk a little bit more about I think the proposal is to break that into 3 lots, and I think you're talking about it based on the density, but I'm not quite sure I understand the need.
Sure. So this is 7.3 acres. It comes down here and cuts over. So you've got 250 units, 125 and 125. So that's lot number 2. Lot number 1 is 16.7 acres, and it incorporates the clubhouse, the townhome, or what we'll just call 6 plexes. Here are the 8 and 12 plexes plus. So that's lot 2. And then lot 3 is the multifunction recreation, because this is all part of the single lot. So we're going to have 151 acre lot. We have 26.9 acres that we can't use. So more than 50% of the site, at least as it pertains to habitable, buildable, gone. So that's lot 3. And then we have 2 of them that are built. One of them is 7 acres with 250. The other at 16.7, currently showing 124. Plus the clubhouse and pool. So that's the 3.
Okay, so I still don't understand, I guess, the need to break them into 3 lots. You own the whole site, so
Correct.
You build it out as you need to.
Correct. From probably
This is more than just
everybody's
phasing.
perspective, so this all largely has to do with financing, right? And how you bring in capital to capitalize developments. And so you think about it almost like phasing, right? If this is one property with one developer, I'm saying that there's 2 phases plus an outlot. The outlot is like this 26 acres that I don't care what pretty drawings I draw, you can't build on it, at least for the moment. So you focus on what can you do, and that's the 25 acres that we broke into a 7.3 and the 16. And the 7.3 that's really spot on and dialed in. The project I did down, that I just mentioned next across from Hy-Vee was 246 units on about 8 acres. So this is, why you do it and you break it into phases is largely because of absorption and how quickly a property can get filled up ties to how much capital and lending and so on and so on. So you have to break it into smaller pieces.
Okay, that helps.
And simply put, David, if I built 375 units and just waved a wand and turned them all on, it's too much, too fast. You got too many other units, and there's just not enough market, and there's nothing worse than, an underperforming property through lease up. It's critical that you succeed, because the good news is in residential, unlike in retail, that you can have a great Christmas holiday and they go broke 5 months later because nobody ever went. When you move into a home, you're only turning over 20-30% of that property a year. Many people stay for a long time. So stabilizing a property is a key element in the success. And so you only want to bring on enough units that can be in concert with the demand. Mm-hmm. And that's what this is here.
All right, thank you. I've got a couple other comments.
Sure.
And, this is just concept, I realize, so you've got more work to do here, but I'll give you my feedback anyway. I think the medium density and the townhouse units that are shown in the representations are exceptionally plain, and I would hope that as you get further in development, I thought the apartment examples look pretty nice. There's an awful lot of vinyl siding on these other
Yeah,
units,
if I could simplify and tell you, there's pictures and they got put on a single piece of paper. Believe me when I tell you, you're going to love when we come in and I got everything done architecturally. You're going to like what we do. Those are, and I don't disagree with you. Some of those pictures I didn't pick them. They was staff at the architect. But you'll see as we further this, we'll integrate some very attractive looks.
Good. I was hoping to hear that, and we'll look forward to seeing the next round of this. Okay, you talked about the 3 lots. And then my other feedback, I guess, is that I think because there is a good deal of distance from this development to any neighborhood park, that part of your open space that you're planning into, I think there needs to be some playground equipment in there someplace.
Right. This 26 acres is going to be something that will come back in and probably do this whole process, meaning planning and coming and seeing you. But this multifunction recreational is, super exciting for us and I think for the whole project. And we do have playground equipment. We've got, a whole list of things that we're doing. I'm working with, a couple of companies that have done a lot in the parks and rec area. And so that, we've got this area, which is, kind of the hub, and we put this here in a way that, the whole neighborhood can come utilize. And imagine that, in the winter, you got, you can put a hockey ice skating rink. We talked about doing a half, it's almost perfect to run a half a mile around this beautiful thing here. I've walked all of it, and, so we'll have quite a bit in that recreational component in Lot 3. And as I put in our concept package, that's a sort of a secondary thing that we're working on now that we'll bring with you, and it will go in concert with the development as we come out of the ground.
All right.
It's a private park, correct? So
Yeah.
it's not-
Yep.
Yep.
Do you have any concerns about, so you're going to have a lot of construction traffic throughout that. Is there any other, anything the city can do to help you bypass that, or are you not concerned about that?
Bypassing what?
Well, you're going to have, you're going to put in those apartments,
Right.
and after that, you're doing all this building over the next couple of years on that. You basically got to get all that traffic in and out of that road. Not a concern. Okay.
No. Not only that, but if I could tell you the what we call the emergency exit road.
Yep.
I've driven it now dozens
Well,
of times.
I guess that was my question.
And it works perfect. It's
Okay.
a gravel road.
And you can
The
use
bridge.
that.
The guy drives big dump trucks, and
Okay.
we'll probably, for construction traffic and stuff, we'll probably utilize that other emergency use.
Any
one,
other
too.
questions?
No.
I think you got everything.
Okay. Thank you
for your
guys.
time. Thank you.
Happy day.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you need anything from us?
Nope,
Just-
that's
yep.
just the comments.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, on to item L, Event Center Text Amendment.
Yep, there's no vote on a concept plan, so it's just feedback.
You're good?
That's it. So you're good to go.
Just feedback.
You're
Yep.
good to go.
What you-
Have a great day.
Keep it coming.
All right.
Thank you for your time.
You can stay if
you.
you want.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Before you have the Event Center text amendment. The applicant on this one was Amanda Fisher. This is an amendment separate from the IUP application, so we'll talk about this independent of that because this amendment would apply to all properties zoned A1 agricultural. So the request is to allow event centers as a use in the A1 zoning district, the ag zoning district. Event centers can describe a wide variety of uses, so things like public assemblies, meetings, private meetings, retreats, parties, weddings, receptions, concerts, and dances. It's a use that is commonly allowed in commercial districts, so we're looking at doing it as an IUP, in this case for the A1 zoning district, to allow it as an IUP, with standards to mitigate the effects on adjacent properties. So staff did review a number of cities that were included in your packet, along with a table that summarized how they handled event centers, to look at what kind of standards there were, how they allowed it, and how that would come into play in Dayton. So there were a couple counties, along with a couple cities. The most notable in terms of location to consider was Corcoran is the closest that allows event centers. Otherwise, some larger cities in the metro area would be Rosemount, Cottage Grove, and Scandia, with then Goodhue County, Benton County, and Paynesville, Minnesota all allowing it as well. They were all allowed as a CUP or an IUP, with CUP being on a couple of them and IUP being on a couple others. And then I'll kind of run through how those uses were allowed. They are allowed in commercial areas as well within all of these cities and counties. So some of the standards for the use, there were, I should grab my computer for all this, 'cause I didn't put it on. Pardon the break. Okay, so some of the standards to consider that were included in the ordinance are parking and access. That's being a big one because this is a commercial use within a residential or agricultural area. So there are considerations put in the draft ordinance before you on parking and access, similar to how we just discussed the parking standard for the use, as well as access and how it has to be accessed from. Another consideration is noise. So there is one change in there that the Planning Commission did recommend. So the initial draft ordinance included 10 o'clock for outdoor noise amplification equipment, and the Planning Commission did recommend that be moved to 8 o'clock for outdoor noise amplification. They felt that was more appropriate given the agricultural nature of where the use would be located. Another one is hours of operation. So that is scheduled for 9 in the morning to 10 at night on weeknights, and 9 to 11 on Friday and Saturday. Occupancy, this is more just to limit the number of guests that are allowed, and that'll be based on the building code. Lighting, being outdoor lighting, is there overhead lights, is there lighting on signage, things like that, to limit that and make sure that those are met. Utilities, making sure that they have appropriate, so once you get to a certain occupancy, you have bathroom facilities, then you got to have utilities on site, whether that's sewer and water, which you typically wouldn't find in agriculture. You'd find septic and well, so that they have septic and well sites to provide bathroom facilities. So make sure those are appropriately located on the site. And then buffering, due to the nature of it being commercial in an agricultural zone, having it buffered from adjacent properties for some of those sensitive things like the bathroom facilities or porta potties, the buildings themselves and the operations as well, and any structures, to make sure that you're buffering those from the adjacent properties. So the draft ordinance in the packet includes those, along with two other recommendations I'll mention because they came from Planning Commission. One is the Planning Commission recommended a minimum size for the event center operations of 30 acres. They did go back and forth on this between the 20 and 40 acres and landed at a compromise of 30 acres. Staff did include that was a minimum for the operation and not specific to a lot, just because some of these may come in where they're on a multiple numbers of lots, so they'll take 3 10-acre pieces and use them as one operation, similar to how this property is 2 different parcels. And one of the parcels would not meet the 30-acre requirement, but the operation as a whole is on close to 80 acres. So having that language change in there. Then the other one being more of just a simple change, but changing it so that the sanitary facilities were set back. The original language was from residential property, adjacent residential structure, and now it's been changed to residential property line. So it'll just be measured from the property line and not the adjacent residential structure, meaning it would have been measured previously from the home that is on an adjacent property. Now it'll just be measured from the property line. So that is one change recommended that is included in the draft ordinance from Planning Commission. Otherwise, everything else was drafted by staff. So if there's any other question or any questions for staff on the draft ordinance before you.
Who wants to start?
Mr. Mayor, do we want to open it up?
Not yet.
Okay.
I think we have questions for,
Okay.
if we have any questions for.
Yeah,
Kevin?
one area that I don't think quite works for me is and I guess this comes from the Planning Commission, is around the no noise piece.
Yeah.
And, it says no noise from an event shall be audible from the property line of an adjacent parcel, and yet we're allowing amplified music up until 8 p.m. And so I think you can't say both of those things because there's no way that sound's not going to travel. So I don't know, I think it's unrealistic to say no noise.
I mean,
our like homeowner sound policy says that you can't have a radio loud enough to hear past the property line either. And it even states phonographs, so it's been updated a long time ago. But it's the same concept we hold single-family homeowners.
But I don't know how you enforce something like that, because a dog barking, you can hear.
Exactly. Well,
10
dogs
houses
different than
down.
music, yeah. So it's
Well, does
ordinance.
the ordinance say music, or does it say sound?
Sound amplification
So
systems.
I know, I don't know, I caught it too. I went, you can't hear anything from the property line. I don't know how you enforce that.
Yeah, there's two references. One is for just that all noise, whether it's outdoor or indoor, it has to meet the noise ordinance. And so
Yes.
it's to reference the existing noise ordinance.
Yeah.
Then the other one is the specific to the sound amplification of the outdoor, whether it's, a ceremony that's being held outdoors or a
Ceremony,
concert.
yeah.
So the planning commission felt that restricting that specific type of noise was more
That makes sense.
beneficial than, because the other reference is just for noise as a whole.
Chief, do we get any calls on Magnus? Because there's no way that's not heard past the property line today, and there's neighbors all around there. I've been at one of those
Absolutely.
events; they're loud enough to hear past the property line. So, do we get calls from neighbors today about those?
We have not received any complaints on it,
Okay.
but I know they usually do a large application license, which city council approves.
But they still can't. It doesn't change the fact that they can't.
If city council approves them to go over the noise ordinance, then it's allowed.
And that's part of the approval process,
Correct.
similar to music on the river, or
Yep.
whatever we want to call it. I mean,
So-
you can't tell,
Yeah.
because I can hear the Magnus from my place, and
Yeah.
it's 3/4 of a mile away.
So on that same, I don't want to shift away from what you're saying because I agree with what you're saying. On that same realm, I guess, which gets to the same piece you're talking about. Are we? And I don't. When I read it, I couldn't quite tell how it was reading. Are we saying that if there was an event like a wedding on this site, that they'd still have to get a large assembly permit, or are they saying that this would be in place of the large assembly permit?
The second part of that, correct?
This would
So
be in place of
by
a
having an
large assembly
IUP, they would be allowed to operate under the approved IUP. So whether that would be for
That would be their
yeah. So
permit.
if
Okay, I
if
just wanted to
they
make
were
sure.
only approved for 100 occupants and they wanted to do some type of significant event past that, and
Yep.
they wanted to apply for the large assembly permit because they were going over the 200, then they would have to come in for that because it wouldn't be covered by their IUP.
Okay, thank you. The only other comment I had around noise was the timing on it. So like neighbors can mow their lawn until 9 p.m. at night.
10 o'clock, yeah.
So I think 9 is the, maybe I'm wrong, but I thought 9 was the cutoff for the sound. And so I feel like being equal and consistent across that just makes sense to me.
Is that what it is, Paul? Is it
I
9?
thought it was 9.
Is it 9?
I
Maybe
thought it was
10.
9 too, but I don't remember.
I believe weekends is less. Weekdays are higher
Oh, is
for
it?
power equipment, yes.
Okay.
I believe
okay.
weekdays are 7.
I thought it was 7 to
Or
7 during the week
weekends-
and 9 to 9
weekends-
on the weekends.
No, I think weekends are less, weekdays are more because people get off work and then mow. I would have to review it. I
Okay.
would send an email out with the exact times.
My only point is the standards should be equal across the board. Is what I'm
Instead of
trying to get
creating
to.
more
So whatever,
confusion,
It seems like it.
yeah, whatever that is, I think is what we should match because of if to hold everyone else accountable to.
yeah.
You have any more?
No, I think, well, and certainly my preference would be for an IUP versus a CUP on this one.
That's
Well, yeah, I noticed that other than one, they're all CUPs. I don't, as I've said 1,000 times, I don't like IUPs, but I can be swayed. And the reason I don't like them is because regardless of what they are, if you transfer ownership of the business, the next body that comes in can decide to take it away from you. And I know there was gets off out in the ditch, but years back they tried to make all the horse places get IUPs instead of CUPs for that very reason. So I just don't like IUPs. But leave that up to you guys. I could be swayed either way on this one.
With the way it's written now, can the property applicant choose IUP or CUP, or does it have to be an IUP or have to be?
Currently written, it'd be only IUP is the only.
Be whatever we set it up as.
Can we write it so the property owner that's asking for it can choose which of the two they prefer?
We could certainly include it as a use, as a conditional use or an interim use. It's just making that would
No.
open up conflicts in the code
Okay.
potentially just because of how.
And nobody
the
would ever
process-
choose an IUP.
Okay.
But how, so,
IUP is only for 20 years too. Is that what I heard during the?
it's for whatever we set it.
Yeah,
Okay.
so
Okay.
IUPs, and the reason staff felt an IUP in this case was appropriate is because of how broad event centers can be, weddings, concerts. I mean, when someone sells a property and then wanted to use it as an event, say 20 years down the road, it swapped hands to a different event center owner, and they wanted to change the operations from a wedding facility to a concert venue, the considerations and some of the conditions you would put in place to mitigate those impacts would be different. So they would have to come back in for that IUP and put those mitigation pieces in place before they could operate the
Oh,
business.
but even if it was identical, they could still do that. The current body that's sitting here could easily change that, so. And how do we do an IUP when there's multiple property IDs involved?
The IUP is approved for the both property IDs or 3 or 4, or however many is included.
Okay.
I'm with you on the IUP versus CUP, but I don't have enough of a preference to stop
just-
anything in that matter.
Yeah. Got more?
No, other than the IUP piece, I think, in general, I don't like them either. But I think this,
It's a good
it seems to be an evolving use, 10 to start
Yeah.
with and then lay it down the road. I mean, I know they would be back, for approvals on the building and so on. But as the thing evolves, I think that there's enough possibility of change here that, having some review point down the road would be good for us.
I've got two more
Go
pieces.
ahead.
So since this is going to take place at the large assembly permit, my thoughts are, and this maybe needs to be a second subject we talk about later, but we should look at the large assembly, what the requirements are for that. Whether it's like we lower the number of people that are needed to need a large assembly from 200, I think it's at 200 now to 100. We set how many of those per year each property is allowed before it becomes an event center that needs this. Like I feel like there are certain things that we should be shifting because these documents, while not directly tied together, I think have causality and effect against each other that we should be looking at to have a more stringent drive upon when a large assembly permit's needed and when the need to get an event center is in there. Because right now, technically, I mean, you just get a large assembly for every single one, and we could approve them for every weekend, and there's nothing that says they couldn't do that for every weekend forever, right? Like, we could deny them, but nothing says they can't, and then we get into this, well, why'd you deny this one and not that one, and it becomes a issue. So I think we should be looking at, and it can be a next meeting or whatever, but how we look at that differently, in my opinion. I'm
So
just curious.
staff did try to update the large assembly ordinance to a special event, and we were unsuccessful. But it would be some of those clashing or updated things that
Yeah.
you're talking about.
Am I the only one that's
It was a
feeling this, or
messy
is anyone else on the
No,
same page?
there's a problem because I have a whole bunch of points about the ambiguity that I'm seeing, but that's also an issue. At what point do you need to be considered actually a whole bunch of them. At what point do you need to be considered a event center? What events makes you an event center? I mean, the whole thing seems to me to be kind of messy, and I'm not sure where we go with it, but
So I don't know if we need a work session on the two and make amendments to this later, what that looks like, but I feel like we should do something versus just letting it go. That's
Yep.
my opinion.
yeah, I get that. Are you done with your,
I have one more.
go ahead.
So existing businesses, so we have existing businesses out there that are
Yep.
doing this, and whether this is where the two tie together, whether Magnus is considered one, I don't know. We've got the pumpkin patch, we've got Bunts. These are events that happen.
Yep.
And so maybe it's easier for them. This idea of grandfathering them in, I don't know if that really fits. I would say that we need to better define when these need to be used, and those, in my opinion, those businesses, depending on the definition we come to as a voting consensus, will drive which is the correct for the right one in my mind. I'm not trying to push anything on anyone. I just think that's less applications they have to put in, it's less work, all those kind of things. So I could see some of those moving through the process fairly quickly, given that they've been in place for a long time. But I think we should, just because they've been doing it forever doesn't mean it should be okay now, in my opinion.
The bunch does apply for large
Yep,
assembly.
I know, and so does
Yep.
Magnus, and that's why I said I'm not.
But they should all be the same.
Again,
Or-
we need
or
to
very
define
close
which
to.
should be
Yeah,
used for
right.
which, and then we drive them down that path,
Yeah.
right? That's where I'm getting at. Is
Yeah.
in my opinion, I think we should just be consistent, and we should draw a line in the sand and say this is when we're going to be consistent. And I think it should be after we define the use of the large assembly permit versus this
IUP and whatever, yeah.
event
Yeah, event
center
center.
ordinance. In my opinion, any thoughts on that from anyone?
Well, I think there is I don't know that it's a gap, but we've got some inconsistency there that I don't know changes the direction on this one, but looking backward, then where else does this need to be applied or not?
Well, and does it need to apply when a use slightly changes, or it just gets messy? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, right now we've got, I don't know, would we consider the current facilities grandfathered in that are doing this?
Correct, because they would be in place prior to this ordinance taking effect.
Right.
So,
So they'd be like legal non-conforming.
Correct.
what's that?
They'd be
Legal
legal
non-conforming.
non-conforming.
Yep.
So existed prior to rules being defined.
Right, and then they would follow that ordinance, and that would set out the at what point that they would have to then come in for an IUP, at what point they were expanding enough that they would have to come in for the IUP if they were considered an event center.
Mm-hmm.
So anybody doing this today would be grandfathered in.
And they could just maintain their operations, yep.
Yeah.
Well, that answers that then. But the other piece, I think.
So that's part of the growing pains, is that you can have more and more happen without changes happening, and then they get grandfathered in. Or you can have that forward thinking of what you would like to happen and put those rules in place now.
I would agree with that. The rules should be in place now. Because as Stephen Park grows, there's going to be more events there too.
Okay. Well, and
And-
isn't their event center planned to be there eventually? Maybe I'm wrong.
Well,
It's way down the line.
I don't know what we're going
Yes.
to, I haven't seen the
Phase
master
5.
plan yet,
Yeah,
so I don't
stage
really know.
12, whatever. Yeah. So,
Phase 14,
yeah.
Phase, yeah.
It's in there.
Yeah.
It's a long way.
So again, it's just
It's a long way,
yeah.
way too
think
far out.
I would put on city staff to schedule that and find a time when either it's during a council meeting or whatever to hash this out, because I think it's important. But I don't see it as a need to stop anything we're doing today, unless someone else does.
No, you're talking about the crossover between
Yeah.
Large assembly and
Yeah.
large assembly permit and this.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I get that. All right.
Mayor,
Anybody-
members of council, just quickly, I brought this up at planning commission as well, but 50 people from a fire code perspective that's when I start to have to look at things. So I just bring that up as a point of discussion more than anything. But, right now when we have 200, that's still going to require me to go out and take a look, but there are fire code issues that come in with tents and whatnot around that 50 mark. So I just throw it out there.
You mean from a recurring standpoint?
Capacity of people. Yeah.
Capacity and means of egress, ingress.
No, I get all that, but like even a family wedding reception can blow
Yep.
out 50.
Yep,
That's what I'm
exactly.
wondering. What
Yeah,
you-
and I do have, there are some concerns with current businesses or practices within the community that need to be looked at from a fire code perspective as well. So I just want to make sure that yes, want them to continue, but there's some significant changes that need to take place in order for them to continue the way they are.
You got more?
That's it.
My question would be, I want to go back to the parking thing. Do we think that one stall per 3 people? Most people go to an event center as a couple. So to me, we should have 1 per 2. 1 stall per 2 people, as far as capacity
For what?
for this particular event. I mean, just say the capacity is 200.
For
And-
parking?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where he's at.
The capacity for the event center itself is 200.
Yep.
In this plan, that would be 66 stalls roughly. Is that
Yes.
enough?
I guess I don't know that we know what's enough. That was my point at the last thing.
Because you're going to
Yeah,
have,
we've
you
talked
have-
about
if
that.
you have 200 guests, are you going to have 60 cars plus whoever else, servers, entertained, or
Yeah.
staff?
But
I don't know if that's enough. To me, I would say I'd ask for one stall per 2 people.
You could split it
of
down the
the
middle,
capacity.
1 per 2.5, and then
Whatever, yeah, I mean-
yeah.
what is your concern if let's say they don't have enough parking?
Where are they going to park?
Right.
On the field?
I guess what I would get at is,
Not on the street.
if we deal with the street issue, which I think we will at some point,
Yeah.
I don't know that, again, it gets back to what I was talking about with the concept plan. They would know what their parking needs are. If I put on an event and I'm not providing parking for somebody, I'm gonna lose customers.
Well, not only that, you're going to make your neighbors upset too.
Well, if they follow, if there's no
business
parking
practice,
on the public street, and you clearly can't park in your neighbor's yard,
Yep.
you gotta do something about parking.
Sure.
So,
You just think it's going to free market figure itself out. It's kind of what you're saying.
it probably depends on the use, because, wedding, you're probably right, you'd have two to a car. But I don't know what you do with everything else. I don't know.
Well, there's
What-
there's
we
plenty
put
of
3 in
property
there?
for a little extra parking.
Oh, there is.
You
It's,
know.
yep. As long as, we don't, require them to pave it all.
Yeah, I don't,
So-
just so
You
there's
just
a
want to
place
get
to
as
park.
close
Yeah,
to
because there's
all
going to
the
be minimum
traffic
30
as
acres, so
possible.
there's
Right.
plenty of
Yeah.
parking.
Yeah, I'm fine with it then.
Yeah.
I mean,
I have zero preference.
earlier this summer, there was a graduation right just down from my house, and they were parked all over South Diamond.
Yeah.
You can't have that. You certainly can't have anybody parking on
North Diamond.
on North Diamond Lake Road.
Yeah.
I don't disagree, I think that'll come up again. I don't think anybody should be parking on South Diamond.
Right.
Because there's nowhere to park.
Or north.
Right.
What I think
car,
less
yeah.
specific to the next item, but more specific overall to the general ordinance is that, they have the 30 acre minimum. There should be plenty of space for both the event center and parking.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure I like the 30
parking
acre,
to be
but
looked at too, one thing that needs to be considered is when they do the evaluations is typically in communities that has public transportation. We do not have public transportation here.
So do we want to change it to 1 and 2?
I personally would change it to 1 and 2.
I don't have a preference, I guess, that's fine by me. I think we should clean up the other issue, though. If it's on a road that's dangerous to park on, that needs to just stop, so.
Do we have the authority to put no parking signs on South Diamond Lake? Well, that's our road.
That's our road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Well,
that's,
but that's not here. This is
No.
North Diamond
Actually,
Lake.
no.
But this is
That's county.
Let's focus on
That's the
event
next item,
centers,
though.
period.
This-
Right.
This
Yeah.
one
yep,
specifically.
we're drifting, but.
Yep, let's
Go
do
ahead,
event
Paul.
centers, period.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, you have to do resolutions to classify a street as no parking. So if you want to do South Diamond as no parking, you will have to complete a resolution stating that there's no parking on South Diamond and then sign it.
As I say, then signage has to go up too.
Correct.
Yeah.
And we should deal with that.
We should.
We should handle
That's
that,
the list of
yes.
things.
Okay, anybody else have
got
anything
two
with
from
this? Because
the-
I have a few.
So now that you're done with the heritage, the Old Town Heritage Plan, now you got time to work on that.
I don't do anything all day. I don't know what I do.
You should have a couple more things. Mr.
I
Mayor.
do. I think that 30 acres might be high. But I'll be okay with that, I guess, too. And the reason I mention that is because some of the ironically, the city's activity center is on 1.5 acres in the middle of a city. So
Yeah.
that kind of.
You got a point there.
Or was that your point?
I didn't put it there.
But it's that place.
And it took my library when I was a little short.
That one's not zoned A1.
So it's not zone day 1. This is only for NA1 zones, correct?
And
Okay.
That would mean Elsie Stevens Park isn't big enough either, right?
That's zoned.
So my problem gets.
Huh?
What's that?
Different zoning.
That
My
makes it okay. Government.
That was my point. So I don't know where some of this crosses over into so I went through the list of uses, and so for example, we do have places around here that do seminars. I know horse places will occasionally do seminars. They're in a barn, but they're still seminars. Are those events? Because I didn't see them listed.
Are they operating as a business with those seminars? That's the key. Is there?
Why would that
This would be
matter?
because it's the intent is that this is a commercial operation, so it's a business that runs them on a frequent, every weekend or multiple per weekend basis for what their events are.
But the
done.
impact to the neighborhood is no different.
But it depends on how we classify the use, because this is considering it a principal use, as in there's no residential family or no single family home on this ag lot. So if it was a single family home and it was an accessory to that, it would then be considered a home occupation because it would be tied with that principal use of a single family home, and that's entering a different. So people that use it as a secondary purpose, whether they have like a accessory building that's a horse barn and they use it for horse riding or training or dance classes or whatever, though that's secondary to their use of their property as a single family home.
So if they
It's
don't,
not their primary source of income.
And it's also not the primary use
so
of the
if they
property.
don't take money for this event,
Well, it's not even a money thing at all. I think it just has.
It's
to
more
affect-
just
it's not-
because you can run a business that doesn't make a profit. I mean, it's just a nonprofit that just goes on and is still considered a business entity or an enterprise.
okay.
So it's more that this is used with the principal purpose of the property being only for this, not a single family home with the secondary purpose of running it as, whether it's events or dances or things like that.
Okay. And so, well, the grandfather's already been answered. So, so the golf course wants to start having something. Is that just covered under their?
That would just be.
I mean, they're uniquely zoned as a golf course, so.
Yeah, right. I mean, and that'd be one if they're zoned A1, because the golf course may not be. It might be zoned something else. So this is only applying to the A1 zoning district. 2, I'd have to look and see, but typically that's covered under the golf course use, is that they're allowed to have a clubhouse facility that would then host, events or dinners or, parties of some sort. And
Okay.
that's usually incorporated with that. I can't speak because I can't memorize the code from right here, but
Okay.
I could go look and provide an email.
Yeah, I just have concerns that some of these places that are already doing something can expand now because they're grandfathered in. And
If they do expansions, at some point they do have to come in, and that's the trigger with the nonconformity, is that if they did improvements that would require a building permit or a site plan review, we would then.
these are ag properties, right? So some of these improvements we don't even see.
That's true, yeah. But larger ones we would see. I mean, you still need a building permit for a new building or an addition to a building, regardless of the zoning district.
Okay. Anybody else have anything? Anybody want to come up and talk about this?
Hello, my name is Sarah Van Asten. I live at 16100 South Diamond Lake Road. I have a couple of comments. First, on letter G, where it talks about the neighboring residential property line, I'd like the word residential to be struck because it could be interpreted as neighboring properties that are zoned residential instead of just neighboring properties, because it is an A1 district, so most of your neighbors are A1. So I just want the word residential struck from there, so it just says neighboring property line. It's in 2 locations in letter G. I would vote for the IUP simply because, as you've all alluded to, what is an event center, what counts, what kind of events, and it could change drastically when ownership changes, whereas a boarding facility with horses is a boarding facility with horses. So if it changes hands, it's not going to change drastically from that usage, whereas an event center can change drastically depending on who owns it and how they're operating it. As far as the sound, you made the reference to lawnmowers. I would argue your neighbor mowing their lawn occasionally is not the same frequency as an event center, which is their primary like that is what it does. It hosts events regularly. And amplified music is not the same as mowing your lawn. So I think frequency is what seems to be missing when you talk about, well, is it the same as Magnus? They have events 3 times a year. It is not the same. Is it like mowing your lawn? It is not the same. So I do think frequency needs to be kept in mind, that this is not for one-off events. This is for its primary purpose, is to have events. You're talking about multiple events every weekend, all year long. So I appreciate the desire to have a certain amount of consistency, but it's nowhere near the same thing as mowing your lawn. Those are my comments on this. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think one area where a lot of this will go away is once there's a building there. That's really going to take care of a lot of the noise.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and once it's wrapped in, well,
Yeah.
we don't want to drift in which use, but with this specific use, once it's wrapped in trees, that'll help too. But does anybody else want to come up?
Good evening. My name is Mike Lilia. I live at 14,000 Lawndale Lane North. I am a neighbor of both Magnus and this property in question. And before I forget, I'd like to say, please don't compare Magnus to this. Magnus is not an event center. They have an occasional event for their needs to raise a little money and to for people to find out who they are and what they're doing. It is not the same as somebody who could be open potentially 7 days a week. As was just mentioned, it's the frequency and the type of event. So I'd like to read a few prepared words here. Again, my name is Mike Lilia. I live at 14,000 Lawndale Lane North, directly south of the Fisher Farms and Event Center property. I've owned my property since 1991 and have lived there since 2000. And I want to say I hope Ms. Fisher is successful as a quiet orchardist. Let me say in general, I'm okay with Dayton allowing event centers and should establish ordinances and regulations regarding them. This will give the citizens of Dayton recourse when someone promotes an under-the-radar event center, which I think has already been talked about here a little bit tonight. So the police don't say it's a code enforcement issue, and the enforcement person doesn't say, I don't work that time of day. But those, regardless of event centers, should be going in the commercial and industrial areas, especially if alcohol will be served, as Ms. Fisher has already testified to. When I introduced myself, I had to use my real name and address. Ms. Fisher has skirted this issue by introducing herself using her business address, not her actual home address. Her home address is 12710 Cedarwood Court on a quiet cul-de-sac near the river in eastern Dayton. When her staff, caterers, guests arrive and leave, it won't be in her neighborhood. She won't be dragging a bunch of people in and out of her neighborhood. It'll be in our neighborhood. And we are in a neighborhood, despite the fact that this large parcel is zoned A1, it's still a neighborhood. And there are residents on all sides of this property. Ms. Fisher is required to have a SWEP plan, as well as a certified drainage plan for a parking area, two permits, one issued by the state, one issued by the city, and silt fences in place before moving any dirt, according to the Sandtech memo regarding landform. I hope you guys are familiar with that, so I don't have to explain it. I know about them, and yet Ms. Fisher ignored that and started her parking area before having these things in place. So my question is, what else will she ignore if you give her this event center? Planning Commission originally tabled the question of event centers at its initial meeting because there were both general questions and lack of specifics from Ms. Fisher about her site and plans. And I want to know if those specifics have been provided, and if not, you can't allow this to move forward. The gentleman that talked about the houses that he wants to build had a lot more information, and he hasn't moved a shovelful of dirt. The first 3 websites that come up when doing a web search emphasize Fisher Farms and Event Center as a wedding venue, and Ms. Fisher has already testified that alcohol will be served. We have all been to weddings, and we know what happens at weddings with alcohol. There was recently an accident at the intersection of 144 and Lawndale. With alcohol and lots of people and vehicles, I suspect this issue will increase. Add that to the part of the neighborhood on the south side of 144 has only one entrance, and we found out that during the recent accident that people can be trapped in or locked out of their neighborhood. We have seen steady increase in traffic on 144 with plenty of unmuffled vehicles, I might add, as Dayton, Rogers, and Champlin continue to grow. With the golf course and Magnus Foundation, we have our fair share of outside traffic coming through our neighborhood, and we shouldn't have to add to this. I brought a light here to make a point. Noise, light, smoke, smells don't stop at borders. If they did, we wouldn't need sound barriers on freeways, and I could look up and see the dark sky at night, and we wouldn't be smelling Canadian wildfires right now. Screening won't stop that, and especially lights flashing over everybody's neighborhood as the cars come and go, leaving her parking area. And if you find this annoying, wait until another 100 cars leave a parking lot. I don't know if this is still valid, but a path through the property was listed as Note 26 of the Sandtech memo as part of a park. This was never discussed at either Planning Commission meetings. So my question is the city following its own guidelines here? Let me read from your own text, right at the very bottom of the agenda, as a matter of fact. The City of Dayton's mission is to promote a thriving community to provide residents with a safe and pleasant place to live while preserving our rural character, creating connections to our natural resources, and providing customer service that is efficient, fiscally responsible, and responsive. So my question is encouraging or allowing more alcohol safe? Does encouraging or allowing more traffic provide residents with a pleasant place to live? In closing, we should keep a few things in mind. One, just because we can doesn't mean we should. We need to consider how our actions might affect others, which seems to be sorely lacking in today's society. As mentioned, loud vehicles that are constantly driving down North Diamond Lake Road or 144. And it is our neighborhood, not hers, that will see the brunt of Ms. Fisher's actions. If you say no to this, Ms. Fisher will still have her property, which she can grow all the apples she would like, and she can sell the property probably for a lot more money than she paid now in 2040 when this area is open for development. And the last question, or the last thing is a question, and it was never answered. Where did staff come up with their assumptions that this would not negatively affect our neighborhood? And all the information that was given to planning and zoning, staff said this will not negatively affect us. But I don't know how you guys like the annoyance of lights in your eyes, but think about 100 cars leaving out of the parking area, and all those lights are going to be sweeping across somebody's house. Initially it'll be mine because I'm right across the street on 144. But according to the county, her driveway will have to move, and it will become off Lawndale. And then all the people on Lawndale that are across from her will have that same issue. And so at some point, I'd like an answer to that question. How did they come up with the fact that somehow this is not going to negatively affect us? Anyway, so that's what I have to say. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to go?
To approach mayor and council to distribute an open letter.
Go ahead.
This is for later reference. This here is what I intend to say today. I only have 6 copies. I apologize.
You're good. We'll take one at the end.
Hey there, folks. My name is Will Vandekrummer. I am at 17400 139th Avenue North here in Dayton. Mayor Fisher and to council members. I'm a husband, a small business owner, and I've been a Dayton resident for more than 20 years. My wife and I had the opportunity to purchase a home here in spring of 2022, and this step represented a homecoming for me and a brand new chapter for my spouse. I write this letter to express my concerns surrounding the pending zoning adjustments and future venue proposed by Ms. Fisher at 1600 North Diamond Lake Road, just a half mile from our home. As I've spent most of my life in Dayton, I've watched as the city has transformed from a largely rural community to a burgeoning city suburb. The development of Cypress Cove, Pineview Meadows, Riverwalk, and Diamond Estates represent only a portion of the explosive residential growth Dayton has experienced over the last 20 years. Personally, I have watched with a certain amount of excitement as the city has welcomed many young and diverse families, like my own, seeking to make this charming city a beautiful home outside the cities. The development of L.C. Stevens and Overlook Parks represent natural extensions of this residential growth aimed at enhancing the lives of an ever-growing number of Dayton's citizens. While the growth of this city excites me, I worry that a new venue being established and zoning adjustments proposed present real hazards to the safety and well-being of Dayton's growing residential population. Speaking anecdotally, as a wedding photographer and DJ of many years, the amount of alcohol served and consumed at most weddings is substantial. While not all guests choose to drink irresponsibly, the fact is, many do. Most rural or barn-style weddings and events I worked as an events vendor lie well outside city limits in loosely populated areas. While this may have been a suitable fit for Dayton 20 years ago, the evolution of Dayton to its current suburban form make it ill-suited for such an event space. The consumption of alcohol by hundreds of guests compounds problematically when we take into consideration Dayton's geography and lack of access to safe transportation for those too intoxicated to drive. With no hotels available in Dayton proper, guests will have to drive to hotels located in neighboring Rogers or Elk River, both of which require navigating highly residential areas. Guests choosing not to take up accommodations in neighboring cities would be forced to drive back through, again, primarily residential areas or past schools, which often host evening activities like dances and football games, to reach the major surrounding highway arteries such as I-94, 101, or 169. Furthermore, as Dayton lies well outside the city limits of large metropolitan areas like Minneapolis and St. Paul, it is unlikely that common ride-sharing apps such as Uber or Lyft would service guests seeking a sober ride home. I don't know if any folks here have tried to call an Uber and a Lyft ride here, and the success is limited, if existent at all. While taxis are indeed a possibility as well, it's largely an outdated means of transit, and most taxi rides to downtown Central, which is where some residents will be coming from as guests to these events, cost $80 plus, which is prohibitively expensive both for those that are having the event, such as the bride and the groom, as well as attendees intending to take them. No one calls a taxi anymore. I have the intent to raise at least one child in Dayton, a child who will navigate the streets as a juvenile and later the roads as a young driver. The knowledge that a large venue will be serving alcohol to up to 200 to 300 guests per evening, depending upon how the zoning works out, without any viable alternatives to find safe rides for those enjoying alcohol, greatly concerns me. This concern is further magnified when the future entrance of the venue is proposed for Lawndale Lane, directly outside my neighborhood. Placing a venue entrance at or near the intersection of Lawndale Lane and North Diamond Lake Road presents further logistical and safety concerns. The intersection is uncontrolled, with only 2 stop signs regulating entry to North Diamond Lake Road from Lawndale Lane. Even with its current moderate traffic, those turning onto North Diamond Lake Road from Lawndale experience difficulty in the summer seeing past the hill to check for oncoming traffic. This task becomes absolute guesswork during the winter when snow embankments creep up to 3 or 4 feet. Increasing the traffic flowing into North Diamond Lake Road at an already challenging intersection would be dangerous. It also presents the likelihood of congestion at the crossroads, which would interrupt the use and enjoyment of citizens' access to North Diamond Lake roads, not to mention our own neighborhoods. As a small business owner of more than a decade, I fully endorse Ms. Fisher's desire to start and sustain a business. I understand what it is to put your efforts into a professional venture that you build over the years. This said, I feel a business should complement and enhance the lives of existing residents of any community it shares. A business that presents a potential danger or barrier of enjoyment to surrounding public and residential property should be approached with extreme scrutiny by the Dayton City Council. I wish to express my extreme concern and opposition to the establishment of this venue and proposed zoning changes to allow expanded capacity at the venue. This business does not serve the interests of an increasingly residential Dayton, in my humble opinion.
All right, thanks. Okay. Anybody else? All right. Any more discussion on this?
We're still on item L, right?
What's that?
We're still on item L, correct?
Okay, this is related to the event
This is
centers
the-
in total.
Correct.
Yep,
Okay.
the text.
Yep.
The text
Yep.
on it.
So I kind of lost track. Have we proposed any changes to what the planning commission looked
Mayor and
at?
council, the only change that I have noted is the 1 and 2 parking versus the 1 and 3 parking that has been noted. There's been some conversation about large assembly comments and event centers when those are out, but that's more of a work session discussion of where those kind of lie. But the only update that I have at this moment is 1 and 2 parking that I am aware of.
That's the only change I've heard so far, but there hasn't been any formal motions made or
Correct.
anything like that.
Regarding you guys okay with the IUP?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm okay with it. Here's my concern over this whole thing. I mean, clearly, nobody likes progress. And now we all call it progress, whether it's progress or not. I've been in Dayton for 37 years. Personally, I wish it was like it was 37 years ago. But it's not reality. It's just not. Would we rather have 230 homes on this lot? Because then we're going to have 300 cars going in and out of there every day.
I just want to be careful. We're not talking about any specific lot right now.
For what?
Not talking about any specific lot right now.
Oh, yeah.
Just to be
We're
careful.
talking about
It
The
can't happen.
ordinance as a whole. Yep.
Okay. Okay.
I guess part of that I'd like to reiterate is I would much rather have, I know it may be a choice between the not good and the really bad, but
Right.
having 400 houses, having the houses next to me it was a change.
It's a change, without a doubt.
Yeah.
But unless you own the whole city, you can't control everything.
Well,
It's just the way it is.
you can shape it though. So what tools do we have? Let's say the chief shows up 2 years later and says this place is a nightmare. What tools do we have in the IUP to say it's yanked?
We revoke their IUP, and
But
then
what kind of grounds do we have to yank that IUP?
they're not meeting any of the conditions as part of the IUP. So every IUP that would get adopted has conditions that they have to follow, and they'll be the ordinance. So if the event center ordinance goes forward, it'd be the conditions that are established in there, plus any conditions we add as part of an individual IUP that's unique to whatever property that's for. If they're not meeting any of those IUP conditions upon inspection, it would come before council to then consider revoking their IUP. If that is done, the business has to cease operations.
There is a concern there, I guess, and Mike had a valid point. And what is the criteria? Because I don't know. Clearly, there was a whole lot of gravel moved on there before we ever gave anybody the okay to do it. Now, is that okay? If I wanted to, should I bring in 100 dump trucks of sand and put it in my...
We're moving on to N. We haven't finished there yet.
Let's stay focused on the event center
focus on
ordinance
that.
as a whole.
I don't disagree with anything you're
We'll
saying.
talk about Ms. Fisher's site next.
Right.
But this is just, they're two separate independent actions
Yeah.
to concentrate. Right now is on the ordinance text amendment only, and then we'll talk about
So
site-specific.
on the ordinance itself, the idea to strike the word residential, I think is a good idea, and just to use
I can live with
the
that.
property line.
I agree.
So I think that'll be important. I have no preference on a 2 versus 3. I don't know what the right number is, which is why I have no preference.
Yeah.
So I'll go either way on that one. But someone needs to make a motion.
I would agree with that around the distinction on the property line. I think that needs to go away. The parking piece, too, I'm not sure. I don't do those calculations. Adequate parking is clearly key to success for the business and also for the neighbors in wherever these are, since we're talking about this more generically. And with a gravel parking lot, do people really park in stalls when they're parking out in a field? And so I think they're less efficient anyway, and so I think you need more space just because of that. I mean, go park somewhere in the wintertime when the lines disappear. And, what does the capacity of that lot lose when people get to choose their own spacing?
Okay, that's a good point.
So I think, trying to ensure that there's adequate parking, going to the 1 to 2 is probably a step in the right direction without other information to go by.
So I'll make maybe one more comment, and maybe I'll just make a motion and move this along. So my comment is that everyone that has lived in Dayton for a long time or chose to live in Dayton lives here because we appreciate the residential or the agricultural piece that the rural feel that Dayton brings. We want the rural feel to stay longer. These businesses will have to stay around for longer, meaning things not specific to what's coming up next, but you think of, for example, Dean's Pumpkin Patch, right? That will allow that business to stay around longer and may keep that agricultural for much longer, right? So I see that having a proper ordinance in place for any event center makes sense. I think for what we're looking at, and specific to A1 district. So I would move that we approve it, given that we remove the word residential and we change it to 2 per. Wait. How did you say the parking?
Per capacity of.
One stall for
being
2
built.
people. Thank you. Yes. So I'd make that motion.
So Kevin, is that the 2 that you had required? 2 changes?
I don't think I missed it.
Yeah, I mean, it's based on the motion, so it's whatever.
But there weren't any other ones I missed that we talked about?
No, those are the
Okay.
ones that you were talking about.
That's correct.
Is there any criteria that a guy would put in play for limiting the amount of events per week?
I think that'd be
Take-
specific to the IUP itself, in my opinion.
Okay.
Right.
Versus
That can be
just
done in
the.
IUP.
Yeah. Because you think of like if this were to extend to, say, Bunts, they do, I think it's 1 week straight, right? 7 in a row.
Seven, sure.
I think something like that.
Something
Yeah.
like that, yeah.
So I'd rather
But
look
it's
at that
only
at an
for 1
IU.
week.
Correct. That's what I mean. I'd rather look at that at an IUP
Well, I don't-
basis.
Is that making
than-
an activity center?
I don't, again, I don't know. I'm just using as an example, but yeah.
No, but just all of a sudden theoretically say that Stevens Park ends up being 20 events a year. I mean, it's possible. A lot of cities, they've got something going on. Look at Champlain, Mississippi Crossing.
Yeah, I think
something
that's where
going
you-
on. They probably have 20 events going on during the summer.
And I think that's where you need to define like what's the sand in the line to say that this is an event center versus we're just hosting events at this park.
Yeah.
So that's I think the discussion later on.
And again, this is specific only to egg.
Only to Egg Event Center.
That's the whole city of Dayton.
I don't disagree. I'm just making it clear.
Yeah,
All right. So we got a motion?
it's got a motion.
Need a second.
I'll second the motion.
Travis? Any more discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 I'm going to go aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion carries 5-0.
All right.
Now, Scott, all those things we were talking about, I'd love to talk about.
And we will.
Yes.
Now we
Just so you are on the same page. Yeah.
Item M. Interim use permit.
Now we
for
got
an
another
event
45 minutes, huh?
center. I hope not. What time is it? We are an hour behind already.
Yeah.
Or close.
Just guess.
Well, I'm not blaming you. We have been doing a lot of talking, so.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Mayor, members of the council. So now this is the item from the previous action. This is the individual site now. And we did hear some public comment, so just keep that in mind as it regards to this item now. So this is the Fisher Event Center IUP. Location is 16900 North Diamond Lake Road. It is 66 acres, guided low-density residential in our comp plan. It is zoned A1 agricultural. It is in that 2040 MUSA staging area, so with utilities anticipated in the 2040 decade. The applicant is requesting the IUP, plans to develop in stages. So planting first stage, apple orchard, and hosted tented events with the gravel parking lot. So that would be the apple orchard on the western half of the site with tented events where the event center is proposed in a future phase with a gravel parking lot to park those coming to the apple orchard and the tented events. The applicant does plan to build the event center itself, the structure, in 2025. This would require an IUP amendment as it would be an expansion of the IUP. So right now they're only asking for an IUP to plant the apple orchard and host tented events with a gravel parking lot. any future operations or expansion would require an IUP amendment, and then the council would take action on that and could choose to approve or deny that amendment request. Staff is recommending that the IUP expires when ownership of the parcel changes. So that's that IUP expiration. To go over the site plan, as is proposed, the green boxes are phase 1, the orange boxes are phase 2, and the light purple boxes are phase 3. So phase 1 you'll see is the parking lot on the southern side of the lot with the access coming onto County Road 144. That is a temporary access that the county has agreed to for 5 years, a maximum time limit of 5 years. So within 5 years it will need to shift to Lawndale Lane through an access such as this. This will need to be revised as both the parking and the access drive are too close to the property line as it sits today to meet the ordinance that we just put in place with the last action. So they'll need to still meet all those conditions from that ordinance. And then tented events in lieu of the event center. So that'll be located over here adjacent to the parking lot gravel area. You'll note the existing well is located basically where the tented events are planned. And then the septic would be put in with phase 2 with the event center. So it's a gravel parking area with phase 1 with some stormwater basin and infiltration to treat the rainwater that comes off of that parking area, and then tented events. As part of future phases, they are planning to do two event center buildings, one main event center, and then one smaller building off to the side with future well and septic as part of that phase, along with the initial phase of the gravel trail. Phase 3 includes the full gravel trail loop, along with the 20-foot drive aisle that extends to Lawndale, and then any future stormwater ponding that would be needed for the extension of this access over to Lawndale. That's the staging as it's proposed today. Again, the action tonight would just be on the phase 1 portions, so it would just be on the access from County Road 144, the gravel parking lot, and the tented events, along with the stormwater pond that's associated with the parking area. Again, I did an update from Planning Commission, but this would be to take action on the resolution, and you have essentially 4 options for that. You can either approve Resolution 26-2023, approve it with changes, deny it with findings of fact, or table it if the applicant agrees to an extension, if there was some additional information you were looking for. So those are your 4 options tonight. And I'll keep this one up as I think that'll probably be the best for conversation. Otherwise, staff will take questions, and then I believe the applicant is in the audience.
Any questions
as well
for staff? I just have a little one.
Mm-hmm.
Why is the planting of apple trees in this? Because
that's more related to the agricultural use. It's just kind of tied into the whole operations. But the apples, they could plant the apples.
Okay.
It's just an
It is technically not
right
regulated by the IUP. The tented events, however.
Yep, the tented events.
I have a question. Since this is zoned agriculture right now, could the homeowner decide just to put hundreds of pigs on this property? Or would that
that's
require a
the
special
animal ordinance, and there'd be a limit based on the size of the property for that. And I couldn't do the calculation offhand right now, but that would be limited. But they could do anything agricultural
or cows or
they could do
chickens
farming,
or
they could
any
do
farming
animals
related.
to a threshold. They could plant all the apple trees they wanted. But that's all permitted as right now with an ag property.
Correct.
Yeah, you wouldn't want 100 pigs next to you.
I wouldn't. No.
But they could do that today.
Yeah, that's why I asked. I didn't know if they needed a special to come in and get approval to do that. I didn't
They
know.
do not. Yeah, they'd have to meet the number that you can meet per acre or whatever. But
Yeah.
they could do a pig farm if they wanted to.
Okay.
Totally could on that side.
Any questions?
So this is where we can have some criteria?
Specific to this lot.
Yeah, so the event center ordinance set like basically the wide parameters. And the IUP you can set smaller parameters of specific things related to the IUP.
So the event center ordinance that was just passed, it's essentially taking those conditions and now considering this property with those, and either adding additional ones because of the unique nature of this property versus maybe another, but taking those conditions that were supposed to apply to all A1 properties and then applying them to this individual site.
Mm-hmm.
So when you asked about work being done, now would be that time to ask that question.
Correct. That's where,
So I can comment on that if you...
Which you might as well come up.
As far as the work being done, there was work done prior, and when staff was made aware of it, we put a stop work order to the property to cease work until the appropriate permits were in place, the access permit, and then the IUP from the city council, and the SWIP plan, yeah, and erosion control plan, all of those permits or plans.
And then my question would be, how did that whole process actually happen? Because all of that gravel came off of Zanzibar.
Correct. It was kind of a unique situation. Amanda Fisher.
Somebody was looking to get rid of it. Somebody
Yes.
wanted it.
Well, the actual company doing the work, it was a lot cheaper for them to offload it local.
Okay,
Than,
that makes
and
sense.
it saved whoever was paying for it. It saved them a lot of money. The actual end client, I don't know if it was the city paying for that or if that was a private party who was contracting that job.
Hey, Zanzibar, that was us.
So I think in the long run, it did save the city a lot of money for where it went to. And between my property and another one.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was just kind of one of those, it happened really fast, and it was not an intention to violate any rules or permitting or anything. It was just kind of thrown in my lap. I took it. So I do apologize. That was not my intention. I've been running an HVAC and plumbing company for 14 years, and permits are a big deal. So it was never my intention to overstep those boundaries. As soon as I was told to stop work, I stopped work. And there's been gravel sitting there with half a day's worth of work to finish. So,
With the idea of the driveway, the county is okay with it for 5 years. Why would we not use the driveway that's currently there?
it is in a very bad location for
Well,
sightlines.
That whole thing is, I mean, even moving it down on a couple hundred.
Moving it to where it's going to be located is right in between the passing zones. So you've got a passing zone from the top of the hill, and you have a passing zone from Lawndale. And it basically intersects that section. It's the best possible location for that. It's probably even better than Lawndale in terms of sightlines. And I've actually had a resident from Lawndale request me to trim back some of the bushes because it interferes with sightlines. That the existing foliage there that's overgrown, which is on my to-do list this week or next week. So there's ultimately, honestly, it would be better in terms of the traffic and maybe even slowing some of that stuff down that goes through there if it were to stay there. And in a perfect world, I'd love to petition with the county to leave it there and not have to interfere with any of the stuff going on Lawndale. But that all kind of comes into a different atmosphere. It'd be great at bare minimum to put some stop signs on Diamond Lake Road at Lawndale to slow that traffic down, especially if I am forced to bring the driveway out onto Lawndale, because then that will help with all of that traffic load through there. I know there's some desire for a roundabout there as well, but that's down the road. One clarification that Kevin stated, the building in the middle of the property is not for events. That will be an agricultural purpose pole building to house equipment and farm animals, chickens mostly. I don't really have a desire for pigs, but it's always open for debate, I guess. I've got a client from my other business who's trying to offload her pigs on me.
Another area where, and I guess I can agree with it, but I got to be careful because I'm into concerts. I like them. Is there a way, and this is going to take some time to get established.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think long before the activities to be too numerous,
Mm-hmm.
the building will be up.
Oh yeah, definitely. I don't
So-
have anything booked for this year. I don't know actually even have officially anything booked for next year yet, except for one small family event.
Okay. To pacify some of the concern about an event every day of the week. Is it feasible to limit it to Friday through Sunday? Until the building is up.
Honestly, I don't see that being an issue. Again, it all depends upon what comes in, but the biggest desire for wedding events is that Saturday event for most people. So I don't foresee it being an issue.
And the restroom idea, porta potties for time being.
Mm-hmm. I do have one currently on site that isn't visible from anywhere unless you're right in front of it. But it would be, for specific events that come up, there would be a few extras brought on, but it'll be hidden from views.
That's really all I've got. I don't know what the appetite is for, until the actual building is there. Do you limit to Friday through Saturday, Sunday?
There'll be a new IUP when the building gets built, correct? So we could just do it with the current one. We could just change that without having to stipulate the building piece.
What are you asking?
If we can restrict any events Friday through Sunday
For now.
while it's tented.
Correct. So this IUP is strictly for tented events.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Fisher will have to come back in for anything she wants to do with an
Right.
event center.
So
period.
you're suggesting that
It only
we put a
take
limit.
place.
For this IUP,
Yeah.
you're suggesting that we do Friday through Sunday
Friday through
events
Sunday.
only.
Yeah.
As part of this IUP. Again, the amendment
Okay.
would be different
You're
once
okay
the
with
event
that?
center is up and
Honestly, like I said, I don't have any issues with that, so.
Okay.
I mean, staff doesn't either. That's
that's totally up to
yeah.
you guys.
Right.
It's totally up to you guys.
But it sounds like
If
that's-
something were to
yeah.
come up, I would obviously then bring it, usually you find out about those things well in advance if there's really a specific request for something, but.
So in that case, if we approved it Friday and Saturday, Sunday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday,
I mean-
and an event wanted to happen on, say, a Wednesday afternoon, someone wanted to have a business conference.
Because it's a
out there.
holiday or something.
Yeah,
What's
sure.
that?
Whatever
Large
reason,
assembly
whatever,
permit?
Whatever. Could they use a large assembly permit in place of that one? With the way the large assembly permit's written now.
I'm not
And,
sure that they
and
could-
then are we
well,
required
the
to send a
struggle is
notice
that
to all the neighbors, 500 or whatever?
The
whatever.
large assembly permit is for 200 people or more, and the event may not have more than 200 people. It might only have 50, which wouldn't require a large assembly permit anyways.
Okay.
But if the events are limited to Friday through Sunday, staff would be looking to essentially make sure that there's no events there on any of the other days. And so requesting as a one-off would technically require an IUP amendment to the IUP saying that the events could happen on Wednesdays. So that is
Or just a specific date.
right.
July 4th, whatever it is. 'Cause it
Right. I
falls
mean,
on
you could
different day
say
every
you could
year.
say
Yep.
Friday through
Well, that's-
Sunday and holidays.
I guess that would be a really good question then that we're kind of bringing up is, what if there's a corporate, barbecue that wants to happen? That's middle of the day, is that being restricted then?
Yeah, we'd be setting
It
days
would
on
be
it.
if it was on Wednesday and you said Friday through, it would
Yeah.
be.
Yeah. Maybe Friday through
But,
Sunday and holidays.
currently, she doesn't have an event. She's got
Don't
one
have any
event
plan.
planned for
No,
the next, for
I'm just curious because you know what's going to happen.
24,
We'll prove it this way, and then something will come up on a Wednesday,
figured it
and
worked
so
once.
I'd
Yeah.
rather know now what that looks like to
Yeah,
get that
exactly.
done, so everyone's on the same page and there's no confusion about, well, I thought or anything like that. I'd rather just talk about it now.
You could set times, Friday and Saturday, Sunday, whatever, and then you could say
Because I've been
Monday through-
doing a
Monday
lot
through
of
Thursday.
not a lot of like in-your-face advertising. It's just been a lot of the background stuff, so nothing's really been fully booked. But I've been waiting for this IUP approval to really kind of move forward with it. So I guess
I mean,
really
in
think
reality,
a
it's
lot
going to take
more.
2 or 3 years before you get an apple.
No,
So,
I have
no.
apples already.
What?
Yes,
Do you really?
I have. I purchased larger trees from the nursery, and
Yeah, I seen that.
I
big
actually
stick.
already
Big
have.
enough.
like 6 apples.
No, like probably about 100 going.
Oh, that's
There's 300
I-
trees. There's 300 trees in the ground right now, and some of them are pretty large, good size already.
all right. So where do we want to go with this?
I don't know.
So Friday through
you
Sunday.
have
Any other any other exceptions?
It seems to me, and just thinking about events, I mean, people get married on weekends. So I think that's, sort of self-regulating. I mean,
It is.
nobody, for the most part, people aren't going to get married on a Tuesday night. And if it happens, that seems odd to me, who comes to it. But beyond that,
Sorry.
Beyond that, I think that, restricting what it seems to me likely to be smaller events that would occur, business outing kind of thing on an afternoon on a Tuesday, I don't see a lot of the concerns that people have raised manifesting themselves during a daytime kind of a.
I'm just trying to
thing. You're not-
pacify the
not having
500
Led Zeppelin
headlights
there,
shining
you're
into
not-
the living room window. I mean, all of that's going
I've
to...
already started trying to precursor some of that. I've been planting bushes that'll grow 5 to 8 feet tall along the edges of the property to try to
Shield it.
help shield that.
All right.
But it doesn't shield them if the car leaves the parking lot.
Well, the car's gonna leave the parking lot straight out of the parking lot, right?
Well, I understand where his concern is that when if they turn west, it would shine into his property.
But not at 2 o'clock on a Wednesday for a business retreat.
No.
But it would on a Friday or Saturday night or whatever night of the week. Yeah.
Okay, so do you care about during the week, or where do you want to go with that? Because I don't see an issue during the week, but,
No, I don't see an issue during the week.
so, want that restriction or don't want that restriction?
Do we rescind that comment?
What if you go, during the week, you go till 7 p.m.? Then you're not going to have, well, I guess you wouldn't, well, yeah.
Depends
No,
on
all
what
summer
season.
long, all
Yeah,
summer long,
summer,
it's
yeah.
not going to be dark at 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
Yeah, this would be tented events. Tented events in the winter would be an interesting
No, it's not going to
endeavor
happen.
too.
It's
Possible,
just
but
not going to happen.
Yeah.
We got fall events.
Yeah, I
too,
just
some
don't
spring
see
stuff.
this
Yeah.
being an issue till
Just
the next IUP.
Okay.
All right.
So what was the
I'll make a motion that we add the criteria for any, how should I word this? For any actual wedding,
Remember, it's got to be roughly enforceable and,
it's got to make sense.
it's
that
got to
we,
make sense.
okay, I'll do it this way, that we limit events to Friday through Sunday. Any corporate event, any event during Monday through Thursday ends by 6 p.m.
I think that's
Top at 7.
But that's
I'm
fine.
just thinking events that I
Okay,
go to for
7
work.
o'clock, that's fine. And really, in reality, all of this is not going to matter because it's
That's
not going to
right.
be that exciting for
Yep.
the next 2 years.
Yep.
Sorry, but I don't want to burst your bubble or nothing. It's
I
just
don't-
reality.
I'm guessing her
I've-
bubble isn't, yeah, I'm guessing she understands that. so. Okay, so did you catch
You got that
that?
The motion, yeah.
All right.
Just to clarify and just make sure so it's a motion to approve resolution 26-2023 with an amendment to restrict the hours of operation to Friday through Sunday, and then Monday through Thursday events end by 7 p.m.
Yep.
Otherwise, they end at the normal time, which I think is what in the event center ordinance. 11, right?
Whatever's in the,
It was 11.
Yep,
Yeah.
11 on the other
Yeah.
nights.
Yeah.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday would be 11. Just
All
like
right. Anybody else have anything? And was that a motion? I didn't.
Yeah.
That was his
Okay,
motion.
I need a second.
I'll second it. I just try to give people the opportunity to do it if they want to.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any more discussion?
It's come up, and I think it's, in a way separate from this, but we're talking about this one now, and the on-street parking, we just can't have. And I don't know how we make that a part of this.
I don't know that it
So
needs
one
to-
way or another, we need to not allow that.
To add that in.
So there's a,
There's a condition in the IUP that ordinance, or the event center ordinance you just approved, that says when there's no structure present on the site, the applicant shall work with staff to make sure that the appropriate parking is provided for the events that take place. So we have the authority in there to say, we've been receiving complaints about a lot of on-street parking for events, please provide a plan to provide more parking in the gravel parking lot. So if it does become an issue, we have the means to expand the parking area to.
Why can't we do it up front?
Well,
I don't know why
we
I
can't-
mean,
we
I know
don't-
we
we
get
don't
that from the
exactly know
county,
how
you know,
many-
not
how
enough
many
people
cars
have
are gonna
died
be
at
there.
this intersection, so you can't have a light.
I think an acre and a half is about 300 to 400 cars. So that would then make my capacity at like 600 to 800, and I don't think that's going to happen. So,
Yeah, I think you're going to end up with enough parking, but, you know, people do what they.
No,
We've been burnt before.
This
you just
roadway
saying,
is a county roadway,
Yeah,
so
it's
we'd have to talk to the county to have it parked, just no parking. We can't make a resolution to control a county roadway,
But
unfortunately.
I think
We
what
can,
Dave,
we can on Lawndale.
We could on Lawndale, that is correct.
well, and also, I mean, it seems like we could on the IUP say, as part of this IUP, you can't park on the county road. Now, I get the county can't,
Yep.
Yeah.
but it seems like, and
Public
I don't,
Put a
Public do
condition
that.
in there. We have the tools in there to
Right.
say that the parking's not sufficient and there's been parking on the county road, and therefore we're going to require you to put more parking in the
okay.
site
And
plan.
there's going to be plenty of parking.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think we're, okay.
Well, and I think you can help with this in your marketing to make it real clear to people that parking on the road is just simply not
yeah,
allowed.
my contracts will be centered around a lot of the discussions we've been having and neighbors' concerns and things like that, so.
So you want to add that as a condition?
I don't. I
You're
just
not.
thought
It's
that
already
that
in
could
it.
be in there.
If it's
And
already
I'm not
enforceable
worried about
through
parking.
other means, then.
She's got a huge parking area. Nobody's going to want to park on the road. That road, you just walk along, you can take your life in your hands. It's not as bad as South, but it's, yeah. I don't know. It's up to you. Yeah, I think we can
Well,
put the
it's-
condition
it's
on there.
Scott's- It's Scott's motion.
I mean,
but
as
I
far
think
as,
that-
okay.
Well, you know, we can see how it goes, but I would really rather that we deal with it up front.
That's we can
So,
put it in the
so
IUP.
if you want, put it in there and just say there's no parking on Lawndale.
Yeah.
I
So we'll
mean,
vote on
No
his
parking
motion.
on
I
city
think it's your
streets.
motion you need to add.
So we'll vote on his
wait a minute.
motion.
You were talking about Lawndale, not,
No, both.
both.
well, Lawndale's going to be an issue for the next IUP, right?
Yeah, I think so.
But North Diamond, we could easily add that. It's going to be free because there's not, I don't think it's going to be a problem anyway. So, but we could add that as a,
You want to amend your motion, Scott?
I'll amend the motion. And then we'll make a new motion to add no parking on any roadway other than a parking lot.
I will continue to second that.
all right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Any more? All right. So we've got a motion and a second. No more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody need to take a break?
No, let's
No, we
get
got
this.
one
I'm
more.
struggling here.
We have
We have three more left.
We got, 3 more.
3 more?
We
Yeah.
moved things out of the consent.
Oh, that's right.
Oh,
Okay.
my God.
Item N.
You need that break now?
Yeah, tomorrow. Let's come back tomorrow. Wait a minute. I can't do that.
Approval of purchasing command vehicle for the fire department. Item N.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. The action before you is discussed last year in our CIP discussion. If we could move forward on purchasing a command vehicle. I did look at state contract, as Marty and Chief Inga have as well. Unfortunately, there isn't an opportunity based on supply to purchase from there. So I did, Zach and I happened to run across this particular vehicle, Dodge Durango. I took it out for a drive. It meets the needs of the organization. It's listed at $39,786. They do have an option for a service contract for $38.55, which provides a bumper-to-bumper warranty for 84,000 miles. If that warranty is not used, my understanding, outside of the standard 3-year 36, then that money is refunded back to the organization. This purchase also includes the vehicle that you see out parked in the parking lot tonight, a trade. It wouldn't be traded to the dealership. Actually be traded to Guardian's Fleet Safety. where our lights are put in for a trade-in value of $12,000. And those dollars would actually go to outfit the vehicle with lighting and so forth.
What do you think it's going to cost to outfit the new vehicle approximately? Because maybe I missed it in here, but I didn't see it.
Yeah, I did not put that in there. That outfitting of a vehicle is probably between $8,000 and $10,000.
So it's going to eat up basically what you get for the vehicle.
trade.
Correct.
Close
Yeah.
to.
Yep.
One more question. I know this vehicle's white. Are we painting it red?
Negative. I'm not concerned about color. I'm fine with white.
I just wanted to make sure we're not getting paid to repaint the vehicle. That's why I asked. So.
You were just making sure that didn't come up in 2 weeks from now.
Well, anytime.
Because once you're in, you're in.
Yeah.
Currently, the DNR truck, this is one you're talking about trading, right? The
That is
DNR?
correct, yes.
What do we call
Utility
it? Utility 22?
yes.
It's currently wrapped. You open up the
It's
door,
what?
it's yellow. It's got a wrap on it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's an alternative if we wanted to make them.
I was just curious if that was coming out of the pipeline at all. That's all. So.
No,
Okay.
I'm not going to spray paint it.
I don't care what color the vehicle
White
is. If you're happy
helmet,
with it, I'm
white
happy
vehicle,
with it.
screams
So
command to me,
indirectly, it's going to cost approximately 50 grand.
Yes, correct.
Right in that area.
Yep, and that's what we put in the CIP last year.
Yeah.
Correct.
But there's a trade-in for 12 to 15. What's the trade-in?
Yeah, but that pays for all the
That
lighting.
covers the cost of
So it
lighting.
covers all the
Yeah.
Yeah.
siren.
The vehicle
whatever else.
cost
It's
is
still a-
$42,000. whatever you
It's
have.
still an
Right,
asset.
plus
yeah.
8 to 12 or whatever for the wrap. For the, not the wrap, but the lights and siren and whatever you can.
Yeah, so that'll be
I understand.
Essentially free.
free.
Wash. It'll be a wash.
Here's my comment to the whole deal, and at some point, we have to decide, and somewhere along the line, we have to decide, you guys pick and choose what you want, and you get this much money to work with. And don't come back and say, hey, Johnny, I need another 20,000. Somewhere along the line, that's gonna have to happen.
Yeah.
Because this is a prime example, in my opinion. This is more of a want than a need, because the vehicle we have will get us by. I don't know how many miles are on the current. I guess I don't know nothing about it, other than it's red.
I think it's around 63,000.
So it's really not that old. I mean,
What kind of vehicle is like what?
It's a Ford F-250 diesel.
that's the worst thing that's the matter with it. It's a Ford, but whatever.
Probably
Going
the
to Dodge,
diesel
is that
part is
better
probably
for
the
you,
bigger
Scott?
problem.
Is it going to a Dodge? Is that better
No,
for you?
God, no.
Okay, well, can't beat Scott.
Can't please them all.
I think as it gets later, we go in the ditch more often. Go ahead.
That's my biggest comment about this whole deal. I mean, I look at this as, this is my prime example. This is a want, not necessarily, this is just something that we want and we don't have to have, but I'll end it at that. And you guys figure it out. I already know where I stand. Now you do too.
All right, any more, do you have any more comments, Chief, or anything?
I don't have any more comments that weren't probably explained in that staff report. I know that the main concern with having the diesel versus having the Durango is there's more space inside that's needed for medical supplies. That, from what the chief has explained to me, is you can't have the medical supplies outside because they will freeze and whatever else. And so having them inside is crucial to the thing. So right now we currently have the F-150 that the chief is driving around, and that the back seat is full of medical supplies. So there's no way to use the vehicle for anything other than storage in one person, basically.
Yeah.
With the Durango, you could have 4 people in there and then still have the stuff inside with being able to transport people. The diesel doesn't do us anything good. I mean, it provides a vehicle, but that's about all it does for us.
What year is it?
2008, 9.
2009.
So it's
old.
And it's only worth 12?
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
Even being a diesel?
I'll be honest with you, it's the worst diesel engine ever made, the 6.4 liter diesel by Ford.
Getting
So
technical?
that's why it's
All
worth 12 grand. But we can go into
That's
detail.
not why it's worth 12 grand. It's a 2009?
2009.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why it's worth 12 grand. I mean, it's old.
Old.
All right,
So
But there's only
that
60,000
is why the
miles.
request is coming from Chief Henderson. It's also, again, for
Anyway.
better needs of the.
okay, so we are looking for a motion to purchase this vehicle.
I'll make a motion.
And I need a second.
It ain't coming from me.
I'll second.
Okay. More discussion. Seems like there's more needed. I'm just not sure what to ask. Do you have anything?
No.
This does
You
smell
know.
like a want thing, but
Yeah, I'm there. I mean, not this specific vehicle. I think this has got more utility than
yeah, that's for sure.
the original description of what is in the CIP. I haven't loved this one from the beginning, but I think we need to move on from it.
Yeah. Okay. We done with discussion anymore? All those in favor say aye.
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 No.
All those vote no.
No.
All right.
It's fine. I'm used to it.
4-1. Well, that was close, but okay. Now we are on to
Now, what is everything that I missed?
So C and G we pulled out of consent, and C.
Perfect.
Yes, Mayor, members of council, so item C is for the Deerwood Lane sidewalk extension. It is for the portion that is north of 131st. Let me correct myself on the street name. I think it's 131st
It's around the
Avenue.
curve,
And so that is just basically the portion of the curve related to Deerwood Lane that would go to the Hayden Hills neighborhood. It is 131st Avenue, that is correct. So it is a small portion, and we're just here to be able to authorize plans and specs to be able to provide that sidewalk connection across that dangerous corner that people do tend to take at a higher rate of speed from Millersburg residents.
So I have a whole bunch of questions for Jason.
And he's not here. I had a bunch of questions for Jason, too.
Unfortunately, he's not here, so I will do my best to
So
answer
maybe
the
you-
question. I can do my best.
well,
but I will
first
not.
off-
Where's the school bus stop?
The school bus stop. So I did reach out to Anoka Hennepin School District to get all the bus stops that are on Deerwood Lane in this area. There is a bus stop on 131st in Deerwood, both the morning and the afternoon, that goes to Jackson Middle School. There's one on 129th in Deerwood and that is at the bottom of 129th in Deerwood, all the way at the end. And that's for Sevald Park High School. That's both in the morning and the evening. And then for Dayton Elementary, there's one on the north side of 129th Avenue again, and Deerwood at both the morning and the evening.
So this sidewalk doesn't really do much for
The
any
only
of the
thing it
bus
does
stops.
for what it would affect would be the bus stop on 131st in Deerwood related to Jackson Middle School. However, it does not affect any of the other the bus stops on Deerwood. There's a couple other ones, but there's a couple ones that are literally in front of the driveway. So I didn't count those ones. I just counted the ones that are on cross-section intersections that wouldn't be directly related to a house. So, but those are the intersections of 131st and then 129th in Deerwood for both the elementary school and Sevald Park High School.
So how did we come up with a plan where it's 5 feet for half of it with but a 1.5-inch grass strip, which is going to be dead, and 7 the rest of the way up against the road? And I know it said something about
It is current right-of-way, so we could bump it over because it is the city of Dayton's current land. But it is trying to match right-of-way bump outs within that area. So right-of-way doesn't exist far enough over for the landscaping that's on a city of Dayton parcel. So we could.
Why wouldn't a guy push it right up against the road?
for the whole.
So that you don't have the patch of grass.
Right.
That would be Boulevard, and that would be related to Marty's plowing. But other than that, that is.
And this is
Marty
still,
has comments, but
this is still considered sidewalk, right?
it is still considered sidewalk, yes. So
Which
again,
means-
it's only enforceable if we get complaints or see it or whatever. So I know that the resident maybe on the corner would be concerned about plowing that sidewalk or keeping it clear. Again, we do our best to have people do that, but we have to have people to enforce it as well.
And the remainder of it is ours to plow?
Yeah, so we'd have to take care of that. I'll have to figure that out with Marty, because unfortunately it banks up right next to ours, which we already do with the Hayden Hills one, is my guess. Park anyways, and that the sidewalk that bumps up the Hayden Hills Park.
Yeah, so we do the park and the bump out parking lot around there. That's city maintained part of that. The rest of it's maintained by the HOA in there for
Correct. So the other part would be City of Dayton as well. So we do the same thing we do next to Hayden Hills Park.
So we do half, and then the homeowner do the other half.
Correct.
So my only concern with the homeowner, whether or not they do it or don't, but with their spot, so just so I know, their chunk of the, we don't have it pulled up, their chunk of the sidewalk for the homeowner is not against the road, correct?
Correct.
Which I think as a homeowner, I'm going to speak on my behalf, and somebody may disagree, but knowing that the plow is going to push the snow off of the road onto the yard,
Sidewalk.
I'd like to have yard space between the sidewalk, because I don't want to have to remove all of the stuff from the road then into my yard.
But he can easily take the plow and clean it
But we
off the
won't.
sidewalk.
We don't do it for the single family homeowner's property.
This is city property.
Only for part of it.
Only for part of it, yeah. This part.
Hold it. It is city property. It's all city property.
It's all city property.
Okay, but we're getting on a shady road, because then
I
every
get
sidewalk in the
that.
city is city property.
I get that.
And so we have to be consistent, is all I'm saying. In my opinion, we should be consistent. I'm going to say we have to. In my opinion, we should be
Fine,
consistent.
Consistent then.
And if we make it a asphalt trail, then
magically it's ours.
magically it's ours.
But my understanding is we have a sidewalk versus trail
And Jason
Yeah.
knows that more than I do, unfortunately.
Yeah.
policy. I don't know what the right term is.
Yeah, it's
for
a
it.
term
I don't.
of
I
what we
just.
do,
I look
sidewalks
at
versus
the.
what
I
we
don't think
stress.
there's much of a benefit here, but and it seems.
Here's the other issue it did with me is we've had 2 meetings on this with the public. I think it's like 8-1 that wants this thing.
Well, yeah, so we talked about the entire portion.
That don't want it.
Yeah, we talked about the entire portion, and then we talked about at that meeting as a compromise of the two, do just a small portion, and that seemed to appease as many residents as we could, whether that's a yay or nay, because the nays were for the entire portion of the project, not just for the top portion.
So I've
We,
got a.
we didn't have a talk. We didn't really talk about the top.
We,
Just had
at
Vicky.
the,
Came up.
it
One
came up,
person, one person said, yeah, that'd be great.
and the other one said, I wouldn't care. The other ones that were nays before. So again, this was just a compromise. City staff has no regard if you want to
Yep.
do this or not. It's just
I
more or less it's.
just think the whole thing needs to sit in debate until we can get it crossed. Until we can get it across.
Across 129th.
Yeah.
So I have a couple thoughts. First of which is, I have a hard time paying more to engineer and bid the work than the work itself costs to do, according to the. I think it was like 6,100 to bid, something like that, 5,100 to make. I'm rounding, but somewhere in that realm. So I was going to ask Jason why it costs so much to engineer this sidewalk when it costs less to build it than it does to engineer. And
What?
so,
Build it? It's $50,000 to build it, right?
that little chunk? No, the little. Did I read
It's like
right?
$60,000.
$68,000, which includes 56 for construction and 13 for
Then I
indirect
misread it.
costs, engineering, legal, and
But-
admin.
I mean, that would have been a good point.
Yeah.
I mean,
But cement
That's
is, cement's not cheap, but
yeah.
it sounds like
I
pavement's not.
guess my comment is that, this is we heard a lot of feedback from residents that don't want it there. I know that, I had heard campaigning from people that, really felt there's a safety issue there. Because of the addition of the Hayden Hills neighborhood. That seems real to me, but we're not solving it. We compromised, right? We're not making as many people mad by doing it this way, but, are we really accomplishing anything? And I'm not so sure anymore.
I don't think so. That's why I kind of think we should do it all in one fell swoop at some point. But, I mean, it would be nice to have a trail there across to the park, but, and this wonky thing just seems very odd. Plus, it's $60,000.
I don't see the benefit. To me, it's a waste of money. Waiting for the.
All right.
Waiting for the
Well,
comment.
Care to make a motion?
Huh? I'll make a motion, we just kill it.
What would that motion
To
mean?
deny. To deny.
To deny, okay. So we got Scott.
We don't say kill, Scott.
Yeah, we don't. What's wrong with you?
It's been a very, very long 36 hours.
Dayton 37 years ago.
All right, they need a second.
I'll second it. And again, I don't, I think there's a safety issue there, and this doesn't fix it.
Along the
Along that whole
the
stretch.
whole stretch.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Any more discussion?
I'll just say I agree with David that I think there's an issue here. I don't think this addresses the full issue.
I think so, yeah.
I think the solution is the full length, in my opinion, but the residents in the ones that showed up at least was overwhelmingly against it.
Yeah.
And so I have a hard time forcing it upon them personally. And I would say, in my opinion, this should have been talked about back when this development was put in. And then we should have asked the developer to take care of
Yeah.
it, to connect these existing neighborhoods to this new neighborhood, to create.
I don't think they really need
And
sidewalks
by
back
now,
then.
we'd have the access
No,
to
not
park.
no. I mean, when the Hayden Hills development was put in, this should have
sure.
been considered as part of that. It's connecting the existing neighborhoods up with trails and paths. to have
Well, it kind
access.
of was because they gave us trail money. We really can't hit them when we do PUDs with off-site costs.
Mm-hmm.
We can to some extent, but and that's what we take the
Yep.
money. So, okay. So, any more discussion? All those in favor of denying item C,
Aye.
say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? All right. So 5-0.
You're opposed to denying
To
it.
deny it. Negatives, kind of. All right. So that puts that to bed. Item G. So item G, do you want to?
Mayor and members of council, we're looking to hire John Sevald as the community development director for the city of Dayton. I will stand for questions.
So you had how many people apply?
Oh, boy. 7, yep.
And how many should have applied? How many were qualified?
1.
Right.
What should I say?
Well,
You could say,
no.
you could say 2.
Yeah.
You could say 2.
Okay, but you're on the edge of saying two. So, anyways,
2 could have applied based
I
on
think that this is
years
a-
of service and 10 years.
sure. I think this is a fairly important position. I would like this to see to keep looking for candidates. I just don't. I don't think we've looked hard enough, I guess. And I understand we've done one stab at this, looking for candidates, but I just think that this is an important enough thing. And I don't think, I mean, obviously we would like to get somebody in there, but it's not like we've been dying without it. So it's not something I see that we need to get done real quick. I also think that we need somebody that's going to be, I would like to see somebody that has a little different direction or outlook than that candidate. I think we're going to be at odds on some stuff. So, like I said, I think we basically had one, I guess I'll call it 1.5 candidates.
How many days was the posting for?
4 weeks.
30 days.
A month, yeah.
We also reached out to multiple other people. I tried to reach out
Recruit.
and
You tried to
directly hire. And
steal from other
I did
communities?
whatever. No, it was not from other communities.
This
Oh,
technically
okay.
would be stealing as well.
Yeah, this would technically be stealing.
So I have some thoughts on this, none of which I'm shy on. I've shared with Zach in the past, which is I think based on our previous hires of hiring 2 more junior individuals, we need somebody more senior in the city to help kind of move that department along, if you will. He has a lot of experience, which I think is great. I have voiced my concerns over previous comments that have been made during committee meetings that have struck me as odd or peculiar. Peculiar? I can't say the word, but thank you.
By who? Or what do you mean?
By John in the past. And so I think the good news is we've got 1 year to see how this goes. And if all of a sudden we decide this isn't working, we've got the 1 year
Probationary period.
Probationary period to if for whatever reason this isn't working and we can't get it resolved with the individual, and for whatever happens, we've got that time to, and according to Zach, because I asked him, tell me if I'm wrong, for any reason this just isn't working, we can change our minds essentially.
Yeah,
So-
but keep in mind that the way humans work is there's a hurdle to overcome to do that.
I
And
understand.
then we would also, we can't really apply for the job while he's on it. So, or I mean, go out for bids while he's on it. So.
I understand. But I don't know. That's where I'm at. Those are my thoughts on it.
Anybody else?
Well, to respond to that, yeah, and I don't want to get personal around this one, but I'm not even sure how to say it.
You're not gonna hurt my feelings,
You know,
that's
no,
true.
no. Well, I wasn't concerned about it.
Good. Perfect.
But thanks.
Good. Just making
Worried
sure.
about me.
Yeah, you know, that. No, what I don't, you know, I think that, that it's the good and the bad of being a known quantity. You know, somebody we hire off the resume and an interview, we've got little information about, you know, John is certainly somebody known to all of us for his work on the planning commission. You know, he has experience. He may not be our ideal candidate, but you know, I think that there is a need to have somebody in place. I think for, you know, as I see it anyway, as Zach continues to build his team, you know, he needs to have the players to be successful. What I will say is that I don't think we should extend an offer to somebody thinking that, well, you know, we can always change our mind during the probation. Not fair to him, in my view, if we're having those kind of reservations up front. He's gonna leave a job and then be out of a job, and I think that's wrong. If we, you know, as a group, if everybody's feeling that concerned about it, then we shouldn't do it. Having said that, I think that he could do the job here, and I would, you know, I guess I would hold Zach accountable to make sure that we're all rowing the boat in the same direction, and not having, you know, somebody that's got their own agenda and you know, trying to sidestep the direction of the council, whoever that happens to be. I mean, today it's us, but you know, 2 years from now it'll be different, and 4 years from now it'll be different. So, you know, we have to have the staff, the permanent staff, that are guiding the community in the direction of the council, and that's, you know, that's the job. And I'm sure that you all can speak to that's not always fun when we change our minds here. But this is where you work, you know. It comes with the territory. So, so I would, I guess my feeling is that, you know, if people have huge concerns over him, then this shouldn't happen. My concerns are not as deep, and I would move, you know, or vote to approve them. But that's well, that's where I'm at. Don't do it if you're really concerned about it working out.
And just to clarify, the things that I'm talking about are not like substantial that I expect us to have to really execute against the probationary period. I think you said it well. it's a known, it's the positive and negative of knowing who it is, right? You know what that looks like versus just hiring somebody based on an interview. So,
Anything else? Need a motion and a second.
I'll motion that we hire Mr. Sevald.
Need a second.
I'll second it.
Okay, any more discussion?
I'll throw my little piece in there. Zach and I talked about this a little bit, and I'm willing to give anybody a chance. I mean, I can recall a couple of off-the-wall comments that were made, and it struck me as being odd. I mean, for me, it's talk about it here. When I walk out the door, it's over. I mean, so yeah, we're going to agree to disagree at certain times, and I'm used to it. I can handle it. So I'll give the guy a whirl.
I'll maybe add one thing, which is I think it's beneficial that he's a resident of the city.
Yeah.
So I think that hopefully has the effort behind it, that he's really trying to move the city in the right direction. I don't think you'd spend that much time on a committee if you weren't. I don't, those kind of things. As a resident, I think you have an extra vested interest, which I think is helpful.
Yep. A question I would have: how do we come up with the numbers?
What numbers?
What numbers?
The starting salary. How do we come up with that?
It's based on negotiation. So back and forth, lots of conversation about what starting
This
salary
is what
they
it's gonna
want.
take.
Yes, what it's going to be. Back and forth between them and us, basically. So Amy and I work together to figure, okay, do we think it's going to be worthwhile here? Can we make that work there with the budget? And try to figure out the best possible scenario we can while staying within the budget that we have. So that's how it works back and forth. But basically, it's a conversation between Amy and I, and then the applicant.
All right, so I got a motion.
Amy and I try to typically win. That's the idea.
Right.
I was trying to win.
Yeah, right. Any more discussion? All right, we got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. No. So 4-1. All right. If there are no objections, we will be adjourned. We are adjourned.
Okay.